Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming, by the way.
We're gonna have a lot of handshaking is about to happen.
Yeah, it's all good. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, February 12th, 2018. As always, I'd like to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Clerk, could you please lead us? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Did you just make me like 2 copies of this now? I got one done.
Okay, for this evening's meeting, we have,
Oh, gotcha, right.
we'll be reading the mail, and then we're going to do an introduction of some promotions and some new folks that have joined the fire department. Good attendance here. At 6:40, the school committee, via Mike Fontanella, will do a presentation on housing and student growth, student enrollment growth as it relates to housing growth. At 7 o'clock, we'll have an opportunity for public input, and just ask that if anybody does wish to be recognized, just let the chair recognize you, and just state your name and your address, and any comments should be directed through the chair, please. We'll have an opportunity for member updates. 7:10, we will be opening warrants for the special and annual town meetings. And 7:40, we will be discussing the town building and space needs analysis. We're looking to establish a working group, as we discussed at one of our last meetings. 8 p.m., public hearing. Somebody, Mr. Clerk, to keep us honest on that. Application for a wholesale-only Class 2 automobile sales license. At 8:15, we have a public hearing continuation, which is the 20 and 25 mile an hour speed limit changes per Mass General Law, Chapter 90. 8:30, we will do a goals update. Board of Selectmen every year set goals, and we're just kind of doing a check-in to find out where we're at with many of those goals. 9 p.m., we have a report from our town administrator, assistant town administrator. And then we have minutes approval, and we'll adjourn hopefully somewhere around 9:10, 9:15. So, without further ado, Mr. Bergman, if you could take us through the mail.
Sure. Could I suggest that we
I think that's a great
introduce the members of the fire department, and we have Chief Wazinski and some new fire lieutenants and some new paramedics.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes. Front row.
So this evening, I'd like to do a little introductions. We'll start off with our lieutenants. Unfortunately, one of the lieutenants and 2 of the new paramedics are out on a call, as per usual. Over the last several months, we ran a process for the lieutenants. Everybody that was currently in the full-time staff applied for that. There were 9 candidates that ran through the process. We ran through a process that was developed through Team Training Associates. That's the organization that did the Public Safety Strategic Plan. And it was a very independent process. It ran through different scenarios. Part of it was an assessment center where they were evaluated by other fire officers. They ran everybody was ranked and put into the scoring matrix, and 5 of them ran in, or 6 of them went into the second round of interviews. And of that, I'd like to introduce Sean Coffey, Tim Powers, Keith Dunn, and Terrence Gardner, who is out on a call right now. They were the finalists that were promoted to the position of lieutenant. As far as our paramedics, this is a process that we've been trying to push forward for the last couple of years. And this past September, we ran through the process. We brought them, we had 16 apply. First round of interviews at the PD with staff. And second round made it to the board at Neshoba Hospital, which was in front of the doctors and their EMS coordinator. And they were grilled on some of the operations and the protocols, and that was broken down. And we've hired 5 out of the original 16. So we're currently have applications out there again to bring on an additional. So this evening we have Jason Cox, Ron Petrucci, and Brad Williams. So they will be assisting us at bringing the medic program to fruition come July. We're well on our way to getting that going and really establishing this program. Really looking forward to being able to run it in-house on our own.
I hope they appreciate all that you went through to build that building for them.
And I must say, the new station is it's a wonderful place to be in. Finally settling in, and invite all of you any evening, whenever it's convenient, to come. Please come down and take a look. It's nice that we're finally settled in. It's a great place, and we'll be looking forward to doing a lot of good things out there.
What time's dinner?
In the time. We have some really good cooks.
This is fantastic. Appreciate you bringing everybody forward, and congratulations to all of you guys for sticking with us and working hard to be promoted. And I want to see you guys coming into our town. Welcome to Littleton, and hope to see your face not in my house, but I hope to see your face in our town. But, yeah, you guys do a good job of community involvement, so I'm sure that the town will get to know you guys pretty quickly, and welcome you all. Thank you very much, Chief, for bringing it forward.
I apologize. The other two individuals that aren't here who are also on the medical right now are Paul Ricos and Ben Simmons. Yeah. So,
Great.
we have a good crew. Looking forward to some good things.
That's fantastic. If they do get back from the call and we're still here, you're welcome to bring them back, or they can come back at another meeting just to to meet the board and just to be recognized as well. So
Thank you.
appreciate you guys taking some time out this evening and coming out to meet us, and best of luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Welcome, congratulations. Welcome, congratulations. Welcome, congratulations.
Chief, thank you.
That would be a good story for Chuck. Trying to get back. Station, that's how you take it back.
Great. Next, Mr. Chair, yeah.
I'm not going to be
Well, I
shy.
was saying,
Yeah.
I was after Chuck, so, shake hands with,
Chuck, I may not be here tonight.
Yeah.
so Mr. Chair, I'll just run through the
Thank you.
Is this helping or hurting since it came from? Watch out, he wants to lean over and whisper to you.
Mr. Chair, just a few items in the mail packet. First, we received our the preliminary estimate of state aid and assessments. The cherry sheet numbers for fiscal 2019 were released along with the release of the governor's budget. While it is true that we get an increase, we get the announced increase in cherry sheet aid that Governor Baker shared with us at the MMA, the net impact, once you look at some adjustments to what our assessments are, is that it's we about break even. It's actually a net decrease of $24,000. And in the mail packet is a breakdown of those numbers, and we can talk more about that at our joint budget meeting with the Finance Committee and School Committee tomorrow night, which is at 7 o'clock. There is an invitation that we've received to the annual meeting of the 495 Metro West Partnership, which is a group that serves the businesses and communities along the 495 belt. And it will be in Marlborough on Friday, March 2nd. It's a breakfast meeting, starts at 7:30 a.m. And Governor Charlie Baker and Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas will be speaking at that group. So it's usually a good group of business leaders and municipal officials that get to go together. So let us know if you're able to come, and we'll get tickets. Last item I wanted to include in the packet is just to let you know that we have applied for housing choice designation status. The board had voted in December to authorize submission of that application. The application period actually opened in late January, and I got a heads up about the opening, and so from DHCD, and actually Littleton was the first community that submitted their application. Designation decisions will be made by April. Housing choice communities receive priority funding for competitive state grants, including MassWorks grants, and we would also be able to apply for a housing choice grant round that's open later this year, specifically for a housing project, housing initiative, if there were to be one. We score under the category of a 5% increase in housing stock in the last 5 years. That's largely, translates to about 360 units, of which 200 of them are at one address, 15 Great Road. But that does qualify us for the housing production that's already taken place, and that we meet the program's prerequisites for designation, because we do have a community compact. We've signed one with the Lieutenant Governor in 2015, and because we do not have a moratorium on new housing. So those are the prerequisites for being included in the program. I included up here, I didn't see it until the governor's office tweeted it, but there was a shout out to a quote from the Housing Choice launch event in December, which is now in it's an infographic for Littleton, so I appreciate seeing that. So that's it for the mail packet.
Keith, can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
I guess perhaps I had misunderstood at one point. It's not just a pro forma designation. There's actually an application, and we may or may not be selected, or
we will be
do we have
selected.
any reason that we wouldn't be
There's
selected?
no reason.
Okay.
There's no reason that we won't be selected. It's just a matter of timing. That
Okay.
there are two categories. If you are if you've had up to 5 or more % increase, then you automatically get the designation upon them verifying the numbers. If you're 3% or less, 3% or more, between 3 and 5%, then you also have to adopt a number of specific best practices, which there's a list of 9, and actually we've already adopted 6 of them at our town meetings. So
So it is essentially.
right, but
Okay.
it will mean it will be the access to some significant state funding once we are designated. So that's why achieving designation is important to begin with.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have a presentation by Mr. Fontanella, the chairman of the school committee on housing and student enrollment growth. Thank you for coming, Mike.
You're welcome. So this is a rebroadcast of a presentation that we did at school committee a few weeks ago, and it's an extension of a conversation that started at the budget summit meeting we had back in December. There was a question asked at that meeting about what the student growth was like in Littleton. Oh, thank you.
To advance.
Okay, backwards, okay. And Keith Bergman had cited at that meeting, a Metropolitan Area Planning Council study that had been done that analyzed if there was a relationship between housing growth and student enrollment growth. And he quoted at that time that Littleton's housing stock between 2010 and 2016 had grown almost 11%, but in that study it said our student enrollment growth really was just under 4% in that same time period. I thought that was interesting. I decided it would be a good idea for us to take a deeper look at that report, so I put together a presentation that we did at school committee. Again, it was the MAPC that did a study that compared housing permits to student population across Massachusetts. what they realized is that in the late 20th century, during the baby boomers' prime child-rearing years, there was residential choices caused housing stock and student enrollment to move together in a kind of a linear fashion. But over the last 15 years, that trend has not held up, according to this study. They examined the housing permit and enrollment trends across the 234 public school districts in Massachusetts. And you can see here in this slide, this shows the total public school enrollment in Massachusetts from 2000 to 2016. And you can see how it goes down dramatically over that period of time. And that's really due in large part to the aging of baby boomers and their children and the fact that there are fewer new parents and they are having fewer children. This map here shows the changes in enrollment district by district. The large number of red and orange districts illustrates the overall trend of enrollment decline in public schools. The smaller number of blue districts actually shows that the declining enrollment is not universal, and some districts have had some significant growth. The yellow districts, of which Littleton is one and labeled there, are districts that have either had a modest decline or modest growth.
Mike, can I ask you a quick question? This figure, you said public schools. Is this public and charter, or is this just public school?
But whatever, I don't know the answer to that question, but I believe charter schools are typically designated as public schools.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so not private schools at all, but, yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to read, yeah, there.
Gotcha.
All right. So this graph starts to show the relationship between housing growth and public school enrollment over those time periods. All communities had at least some level of increase in housing stock, but the majority of districts had declining enrollment in students. But what is even more striking in this graph is that many of the communities that had significant gains in housing stock only had moderate increases in enrollment or actually had decreases. You can see Littleton here I labeled, and you can see we had, fairly significant housing growth, of about 11%, but again, the student population growth was much lower relative to the housing unit growth, and it was about 4%. And you can see other districts, for instance, Chuck, if you stand up again and see the yellow dot that's diagonally above Littleton?
Stay standing, Charlie.
Yeah, up even more. Okay, that's Nantucket. Okay, so they had 7% growth in housing stock, a little bit less than Littleton, but a significantly higher growth in student enrollment. And then if you go diagonally down to the right there, that's Middleborough. So they had significant growth in housing stock, but a plunge in student enrollment. So what the MAPC observed over this period of time is, again, there used to be a correlation between housing growth and student enrollment growth, but that's not holding up any longer. School children occupying new housing units may obviously cause some marginal change in enrollment, but the housing growth is really only one small factor among a lot of other contributing factors that determine whether or not you're going to have growth or not in your student enrollment. They found that in the cities and towns with the most rapid housing production, enrollment barely budged, and most districts with the largest student increases actually saw very little housing unit change. Their student population growth was growing for different reasons. They saw that the rate of housing unit growth is not a useful predictor of overall enrollment change in the public schools, nor is rapid housing development a precondition to sudden enrollment increases. You may have increases, but it's not necessarily tied, and actually it almost looks like it's certainly not tied directly to the housing development growth. It appears that the broad demographic trends, parental preferences, and housing availability play a much larger role in enrollment growth or decline. They did a further study, breakdown of the 12 fastest growing districts, which grew by an average of over 14% during the study period. And in these 12 rapidly growing districts, housing production rates didn't really show significant correlation with the enrollment. In Natick, Everett, and Chelsea, they added more than 5% of new units, which was a far lower jump than their enrollment rates. Their rates went up, even though their housing stock didn't really grow significantly. In the fastest growing districts, Revere, they only had 1% housing unit growth, but they saw a 20% increase in enrollment. So these findings suggest that rapid housing growth unit is neither a predictor nor a precondition of the net enrollment change. Of the 12 districts they took a closer look at, they broke them down into two distinct clusters. 7 of the districts, Arlington, Belmont, Brookline, Cambridge, Lexington, Lincoln, and Natick, they characterized as highly desirable from an educational perspective with high standardized test scores relative to the rest of the region. But they also found that those districts were expensive to buy a house in. with their region median sale price was twice as much as the average in the rest of the region. The other fast-growing districts, which were Revere, Everett, Chelsea, Lynn, and Waltham, are in diverse, lower income and generally more urbanized communities. And these districts didn't have the same types of test scores, but they were also much less expensive to buy a house in. It was easier to get housing in terms of actual dollars spent. So they had growth even though they didn't have significant housing growth. Their conclusion, the MAPC's, was that, and this is the quote right from the study, is that the permits don't produce the pupils. They demonstrate that the fiscal impact of new residential development can't be estimated without a full understanding of all of the contributing factors, the demographics, and other reasons why people would either, think to move here with school-age children or not. While it's true, obviously, that some students housed in new units, will affect the enrollment of the schools, it's really the larger impact is on those other factors, according to this study. The presence of students, they realize that living having new housing and having students come into it actually may help to mitigate what would otherwise be a rapid and disruptive declines in enrollment, because again, the overall trend is fewer kids available to go to public school. It's just, we just don't have as many children available in the Commonwealth. So the idea that you can actually sustain your student enrollment growth through either housing growth and/or your other trends that make people want to move to a particular community can actually help you not shutter buildings. I don't think that's an issue for Littleton as much, but you read about it in other, larger communities where they've built buildings, back in the 80s or 90s, and now they're realizing they don't maybe need as much capacity. What do? They have it on the books right now. And their conclusion was that, most conditions, additional housing, even family housing, can be accommodated without driving enrollment through the roof. It will have an effect, but it's not going to necessarily have your hallways exploding. They did another report on population and housing demand projections, and they measured all the communities in the MAPC area, and they had two scenarios. They had what they call the status quo scenario. And in that one, they project the total population change in Littleton between 2010 and 2030 to be about 810, a net of 810. But the bulk of it is growth in 65 years or older. And they actually see a reduction in citizens less than 15 years old, school-age children, of about 590. They then did what they call a stronger region scenario, where they beefed up their assumptions on why people might want to move to Littleton. And in that model, they projected a total population change of 1,050. But again, still predicated or focused on that aging population, the baby boomer, and a decrease in the number of children that are available to be enrolled in school of about 530. So this shows our data from the school district, not the same period, so the numbers aren't going to tie out exactly in terms of the percentages, but this is 2013 through the current school year. And you can see that 5 years ago, we had about 1,513 Littleton residents without school choice added in yet. And now we're up to 1,587, which is about a little under 5% growth. Our school choice has gone up by about 9 students, which is about 12%. And in total, we've gone up a little over 5% from about just under 1,600 to just, to 1,670. And this is data that we review at school committee each year. These are the links to the studies that I pulled this information from. And we have this presentation up on our website. I don't know what you guys are intending to do, but we have it available there to look at in whole, and the links are there.
This is in our agenda packet for tonight, so it's available online. And I also put in the packet the MAPC report itself as a PDF, as backup.
So, we had a good discussion at school committee about it afterwards. And, again, we're growing as a community in terms of just housing growth and, number of citizens living here. There's no question about that. And we're also growing as a school district. But I think it was good to take a look at it and quantify it and be able to look at projections and think about, the growth is maybe not as explosive as we think it's going to be, and managing it is going to be, attainable, or more attainable than we might otherwise have thought. It's clear that, we have pressures on us in terms of staffing. That's something that we've dealt with in the budget the last couple of years and will continue to think about. And then we're starting to, put more serious consideration into what our physical capacity is in our buildings for housing the students in our hallways and classrooms. We have some ideas about how to quantify that and work towards some longer-range planning about how we might deal with that. If those projections get towards, we're at, around 1,670, if we get up into that 17 towards 1,800 range, we'd be starting to max out what we'd be comfortable with, putting them in the building. Staffing, is scalable as long as you have the money in terms of efficiencies. The physical capacity obviously takes a lot more planning. You need more lead time on that.
Right. Excellent. I have some comments, but I'll open it up to the board if anybody has any questions or comments on Mike's presentation.
I have one, or two, actually. How much of a factor do you think private schools are in certain towns' school population?
So, I think Littleton is in a unique area. We have, when I first got on the school committee, so you've got two charter schools that are right in striking distance that we definitely contribute students to. When I first got involved, we had Acton-Boxborough had school choice open, and then Boxborough actually had school choice open in their elementary school, and we saw students leaving the district for there. And then, of course, you have, there are a lot of prep schools that are within striking distance, including two that are easily within driving distance. And it definitely has an impact. What I've seen, Acton-Boxborough closed school choice, that's no longer an issue for us and hasn't been for quite a few years now. But we saw a bigger drain back when I first got on the school committee. It leveled off. There's always students who will choose alternative education paths. And so we're never going to retain all of our students that maybe start out as kindergartners. There's always attrition. But it's definitely leveled off, and it's a pretty steady, it doesn't spike, it's pretty steady, the number of kids that are choosing to go in a different road than the Littleton Public Schools. I personally think it's a good thing to have. It makes us competitive. It makes us strive to be able to meet the requirements that our families are asking for, and they vote with their feet sometimes. Lately, we haven't seen it. When I first got involved, there was a lot more voting going on than there is now.
One other quick question. You speak about Revere having like an increase in housing of like 1%, but almost 20% in schools. How does that come about? Is it families moving in with more kids? Is that?
Yeah, I think what it is that, and this is just my own personal opinion based on the reading that I do, there is a drive towards families that want to live more urban than there had been in previous years. And if a school district can show that they're making improvements, which Revere was not good, they've made some strides, and it's a community that many families can afford to live in. Maybe they can't afford to live in Arlington, which is urbanized. I would consider Arlington, fairly urban, not as urban as Revere, but certainly more populous and congested than Littleton. But family trying to choose between Revere and Littleton may have no choice. They may have to live in Revere. They're just not going to be able to afford to buy or rent in Arlington. So I think what you're seeing is, and that's what this study has shown, there are reasons why people will move to a community. It's not necessarily that there's new housing, it's available housing that they can get into. And that was one where they cited that the urban effect versus looking at communities like, Lexington and, places like that where people want to go there because they have terrific schools and they're willing to pay the premium on the housing market to get into those school districts. I feel like we're trending towards that. We have a strong school district. People want to go to school here. We're more affordable than those communities, but not as affordable as some of the other communities. We're in that nebulous area where it'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the next 6 to 10 years.
Right.
Two questions for you, Mike. One, right now, my little one's in first grade, so you hear a lot about the pulse of young kids at that grade level. Do we think the large number of students in kindergarten and particularly kindergarten right now, is just the natural ebb and flow of student populations, or is that the beginning of a ramp up?
I think it's the beginning of a new level of enrollment. I don't think it's necessarily the beginning of a trend where, okay, we went up 20 this year, we're going to go up 20 next year, 20 the year after, 20 the year after, you know, and it's going to trend 20 plus every year. I think that we're going to see enrollments of, 130 to 140, and then we'll see, is that going to go up another 5 or 6, or is it going to go up 10, 10, and then level off? Because those demographic trends that they're citing, where there's just aren't that many, available to, if it does keep going up, it just means that people are coming to Littleton. It's not that we're building houses, it's that the housing stock that's getting, the existing housing stock that's getting turned over is getting bought by people that want to live in Littleton to send their kids to Littleton. That could happen. That's definitely a viable scenario. I could, that may happen. But I definitely think that we're seeing that kind of, when I first got involved, we had a blip where we were having like 100 plus, then it leveled off and actually went down under 100 again.
Yep.
Then it trended back up to 100 plus, now it's 120 to 130.
Yeah, I know I'm asking you to sort of get out
Yeah.
a crystal ball without any
Well,
benefit of data coming
my
out for these
youngest son was a class of 140 that caught us by surprise, but that was an aberration. It was clearly an aberration. It went right back down to normal the year after. And then it was just, again, but now we're seeing a couple years in a row where we're seeing higher enrollment. So, I don't know how to answer your question, like, is it going to continue?
Yeah.
But I would say with a fair amount of confidence that it's not going to drop. It's probably going to level off, at least level off there for a while, and then we'll see what happens with, all the other demographic trends that are influencing these kinds of things.
So that actually feeds into my second question. Keith, or who has the clicker?
I do.
Could you go to the housing and student population growth slide?
Oh, sorry, you can get it back.
Got to go back to that file.
I want to make sure I'm understanding.
Just to, while pulling this up, just to comment on Tommy's class, Heather's class, my daughter's in the same grade. There was that blip. I was on school committee at the time, and you mentioned attrition. That class has significantly dropped off.
Right.
For, kids going to Parker or
Right,
other options.
right. We don't have 140 kids in the 10th grade class, which is where they are right now.
Sure.
This one, or?
It's the one with the housing and student population, they're all headed, never mind. The status quo scenario versus
okay, that's near the
the
end,
stronger
the
region
stronger.
scenario.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize they were all
Yeah.
titled that. So, am I understanding this correctly, that, I guess if we take the change in under 15-year-old population and figure 2/3 of those are school-age kids, 10 to 15 years from now, we could be looking at several hundred fewer students than we're looking at
That's what
today?
they're projecting, because, they're big, if you read the study in a little more detail, their big thing is you can't ignore the fact that there are fewer school-age children than there were 20 years ago.
Okay.
It's dramatic.
Right.
But the question is that we're wrestling with, as you look at this, is that's a model, that could be wrong.
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Littleton might become so attractive that every school-aged kid's gonna move to Littleton, or wanna move to Littleton, or maybe not just Littleton, but maybe, there's 240 districts they studied, maybe we're gonna be in that area of, the top quartile of desirable districts and towns to live in, and we're not gonna see this, we're gonna see a different look. But they're saying that what they think will happen based on what they're seeing, if everything holds true, is this is what will
If
happen.
we were an average school district 15 years from now, we could be
Right.
looking at
Exactly.
20%
Right.
less
Right,
enrollment.
right,
Okay.
right.
Thanks.
Just
wanted to make sure I
it's kind of the,
understood.
all tides, rising tide lifts all boats, but a sinking tide, lowering tide sinks all boats, or lowers all boats. That's the kind of thing that they're projecting. It's just, there's not that many kids left. So, and they're gonna probably not come to 10 districts. They're still gonna stay spread out. There's other reasons why people choose to live in, jobs and.
I did my part.
Exactly.
All right. Cindy, any questions or comments? Mike?
Well, I'm just on the same side that Chase had brought up. I'm just wondering, with the aging population in town, if that could or will generate a high rate of housing stock turnover. And like you said, Littleton schools are desirable. We could conceivably have a big influx.
Correct. That's definitely something that could happen. Like, if you have those empty nesters that choose to sell their house and it's bought by someone who has school-age children. But remember, there just aren't that many families with school-age children. Like, the inevitability of it is that maybe 90% or 75% of the houses used to have, that had, family had school-age children, now maybe only 60 or 65% do, because there are couples that just don't have children. Just don't do, or they only have 1 or 2 kids instead of 4 or 5 kids, like we grew up.
Right.
You know, and we were more traditional families like that. When we were growing up, it was more traditional to have brothers and sisters, a lot of brothers and sisters.
Right, right.
So those are the trends that they're talking about. But you're right, it definitely could happen. And that's the kind of thing where if we remain a strong school district with other reasons, you know, proximity to Boston, good commuter rail service, et cetera, then you're right, that could definitely happen. We could see more of our housing stock churn towards families with school-age children than other towns do.
Right.
And that would either not see as precipitous a decline, or maybe even see continued moderate growth as we go forward.
Right, and I think if you couple that with new development that we're experiencing in town that I know a lot of people are concerned about, that just increases the concern, if you look down the road, years from now, about what could happen.
That's what people think, but you look at this study and you have to ratchet that down and say that's probably not going to happen. We will have some growth conceivably, but it's not going to be a lot bigger than it already is, because if that was true, we would have already seen it. But those demographic trends of not having enough as many kids available to go to school overall
Right.
is having a dramatic impact.
Right.
You just can't get away from that.
Yeah, and I think with respect to the schools, it's one issue, but I think with respect to the town as a
Correct.
whole.
Oh, no doubt.
That's a
The-
whole nother.
yes, absolutely.
So
The
I think
growth
just to
will
be
have-
clear,
this
we're
is-
talking about
yes,
impact on the
this is the
schools.
impact,
Right.
strictly the impact on student enrollment.
Right.
When you
Not
think
the
about
community as a
traffic
whole.
and quality of
Right.
life and other measures, I have nothing to say about that.
Right.
In this particular
Right,
presentation.
right.
He has plenty to say about it.
Exactly. I have thoughts, but I'll keep
You're the
myself-
generator of quality of life.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that, you know, that is something to be said, that schools, because we have a good school district, you know, we're not probably gonna go down as fast as other districts, it's just, which is a good thing, it's a good thing. I mean, it is, you know, but
Right.
it is something that, you know, it will be a challenge, there's no question about it, that we're gonna have to continue to address the challenge, and we'll feel that pressure, so.
Thanks.
Mr. Glavy?
Well, I'll tell you, it's eye-opening information to me, and I don't want to get too far without acknowledging something that is, I think, noteworthy and refreshing, that the person standing in front of us telling us, don't believe those automatic, you know, houses equals student, new student projections, is the chairman of the school committee, and I appreciate you've always been an honest broker in these things, and I think, you know, you guys make your own case, and, you know, hopefully the town treats the Littleton schools as well as, you know, your as well as your product has proven you deserve. And I welcome anything that breaks that knee-jerk reaction that, you know, I just think is a negative way of, you know, coupling housing bad because housing means more students, means more taxes, means less open space, and you know, all of those things should be priorities of anybody in town. Housing options, good schools, open space. And if we're proactive about all of them, then they don't need to compete with each other. And, you know, having good information in front of us is helpful to kind of clear in the mind on that subject.
I agree, and that's the way I look at it, is it just helps us see a clear path forward and understand what we truly need to do and not have to worry about what we don't have to do. We're going to have to do some things. We've got to keep a focus on the budget. We've got to make sure our staffing's right. You know, not only do we add staff, but it's a question of reevaluating how we deploy that staff year by year. And we talked about having that kindergarten class, and then we add a teacher, and then that teacher moves through those elementary grades to make sure that they keep up with that. Well, we might not be able to do that. We might have to leave that kindergarten teacher there and then add a first grade teacher next year, because the kindergarten didn't go down like it did when, you know, our kids were in that situation. So, you know, we keep an eye on that. And then we will have to take a look at the physical capacity and make sure that we're positioned or planning correctly. I think we have the time to make sure we get it right. I don't think we have to make any rash decisions, but I think that we need to do a good analysis of what our capacity is and what the potential for expansion is, and what and come up with some alternatives and strategies, and then when we see exactly what the impacts are, we can execute on what the proper the proper move is, you know, versus building 2 new buildings is probably not the right idea, but adding space to a building or two might get us across the finish line to where those demographic trends start to actually see a leveling off. We don't see that growth year by year, we just see it level off, and maybe even start to go down a little bit, because that's just the reality of the situation, and we'll be okay. And we'll, in the next 10 years, we'll be fine. But it helps us plan.
Yeah, I'm comfortable, and the town should be comfortable that the right kind of analysis is taking place, and you guys are on top of it, and that's, I
It's one
appreciate it.
study, that's the other thing, it's one study, I wouldn't take it at face value. I think it was a well-done study, it was interesting to read, and, they supported it. It wasn't just Littleton they were looking at, it was a pretty broad, they literally basically looked at pretty much every district. There were a couple of districts that didn't report their information that they had to leave out, but it's pretty encompassing, so I think it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it all came from the summit, when Keith
Yep.
brought up the data, and you kind of had an aha moment.
Yep.
And I appreciate you taking it and diving into it and disseminating it in such a way that, it really makes sense for us. And, I'll echo what Paul just said about, kind of pumping the brakes a little bit, and it's, can't be like Chicken Little, we're building too many houses. I think that there's a lot of development going on, and I think that it's incumbent upon us, the school committee, the planning board, and all, all regulatory boards, to be mindful of what's going on and try to do as much limiting as possible. And then I think we're working collaboratively quite well with all the boards.
And reiterating Cindy's point, we may need to be focused on other things besides the schools. I think maybe there's other priorities that need to be addressed sooner than the growth in student population. Well, I think we're okay for now, but there may be other things you guys are addressing that I'm not worrying about, in particular as an elected member of a board.
Right.
That's another way to think about it too. It's like, focus on those things now because they're more impactful on our quality of life. And we can, we'll deal with this as it becomes more of an issue.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks very much. There are conversations that we're having. There are measures that we're putting in place to try to make sure that we're keeping an eye on it. And, hats off to you guys, to the planning board, to the Board of Selectmen. And
Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Paul.
Good shout out there, Mike. Thanks for covering me. But there's some scuttlebutt that we're growing too fast, and this is going to affect the schools, and the measures that could be taken to try to limit housing growth. Some measures can have a negative impact on. Keith had a slide up earlier about housing.
Housing choice.
Housing choice.
Yeah.
Designation. And if we were to put some certain measures in place and put restrictions on, we wouldn't be eligible for a lot of the MassWorks grants and a lot of the things that we've benefited from substantially over the last few years. So we need to look at the whole picture, and look at the impact, not only of the schools, but to your point, to all the other services. And really appreciate you taking the data and disseminating it and distributing it to us. And to your point, it's on the school committee website, it's on our website now as part of our packet, so I encourage all those out there that want a good read. It's great data, it's well done. I appreciate it, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow night.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good stuff. All right, so we have an opportunity now for public input. So anybody that would like to go ahead? Ms. Ruth?
Hi, Katie Caruth, Goldsmith Street, Littleton Library Trustee. And I just want to thank Chuck and Cindy and Paul for visiting the library and touring. We appreciate your coming by and hope it was informative for you. And I wanted to share some additional information about the grant funding that was recently shared with us by MBLC. Some information on the bond. Our grant for $5.8 million is accommodated by the bond that has been already been approved. So that money has been released, and it's not tied up by the governor or anything. So that money is designated for Littleton. And in 30 years, MBLC has never promised and not given a construction grant. And they've given 317 construction grants. So there's a very, very high degree of certainty that that money is available for us. I want to add that we've been told there's no guarantee that there will be another round. If there is, It could be 10 years out because there are 33 libraries in this round. There are close to 20 towns below us on the list who would be happy to take $5.8 million of our tax money slated for Littleton to build a beautiful new library for their own towns, someplace else. And I also wanted to add that in addition to the 7 years of work that went into the library, we did receive a planning and design grant from MBLC. And they're also considering not issuing those grants in the future. And we did spend about $80,000 on the planning and design. So conditions may very well change, and opportunities, could very well disappear. Just wanted to share that with you. And I also wanted to mention, as we think about buildings and space and the needs of our community, a modern library is a gathering space. It is a community center. It's a place for very young children to foster a love of learning. It's a place for our teens, a quiet space to study, to participate in clubs, to have some autonomy and still be supervised. And that's something we don't have for our teens in Littleton. And I have 2 teens. They don't do sports. And it's also a place for our seniors to meet and spend time and participate in activities and attend events and programs. A library is really for every single member of the community. And I just also want to share, I went with Sam to meet with MBLC to get feedback from them on our library plan. Because even though, we have a library architect to design it, they then give feedback, and that was interesting, but they also had comments about our current library, how we ended up so high on the wait list, which I just thought I'd share. What they said was it's impossible to work efficiently in the building. They also cited the shared elevator as an issue. They use Littleton as an example of why to not put books in the basement. People forget they're there, and it's hard for staff to manage a 3rd floor. The departments are not well connected, there's no flow. The meeting space is too small, and we know that the views aren't clear in there. It was never designed to be a library. It was only meant to be a temporary space. The lighting was poor, and in some it's not an efficient or functional space. And we also know about the ADA compliance issues. And last, I want to point out that designing libraries is a specialty among architects. If you pull any old architect off the street, they can't necessarily design a library. It's very, very specialized. There are structural demands, and there's a library needs to be able to change with the population and the needs of the population. And those are considerations that were all put into our design. So I just want to point these things out because people think, oh, that's a big space, we could do it much cheaper. But there's really a lot of thought that goes into that. There are specific standards, they're called the Wisconsin standards, that are the basis for that. So anyway, let me share your books. And I hope you enjoy reading these to some little children. Jenna chose these.
Oh, interesting.
Oh gosh, thank you.
Oh, look at that, huh?
Oh, that's nice.
Chuck and Woodchuck.
There that is.
Thank you very much.
And Chase, would love to have you come by.
I gotta actually get in for a formal tour.
Yeah.
Nobody named Joe.
Joe was the first one in.
Yeah.
Joe already got right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I got my book.
Yep,
Dr. Seuss.
thank you.
Socks and flocks. Thank you very much, Katie. Appreciate it.
Jenny Boyer, I'm not remembering my name. 18 Boxborough Road. So there's been a lot of talk about growth in the city, and obviously it's being felt, right? So I just wanted, I don't really know everything that's going on behind the scenes because we're kind of new onto the scene, but I have lived a lot of places. I've lived coast to coast, and I actually grew up in a town that was really similar to Littleton. And they resisted growth. They had several big, well, Costco came and asked them if they could build there, and they said no, because the town was really worried about too much growth, too fast, wanted to keep small businesses afloat. And so they said no, and so Costco went to the next town up. So it'd be like going to Groton from here. And then that town like exploded with commerce because Costco was a huge chain. And then our small town was like, oh my goodness, we missed the boat. We need some revenue. And so they let Walmart come in, which is just Walmart is fine, but it's a different socioeconomic group that comes, right? And so I've seen the pausing and the being afraid of growth. I know how hard it hurts. My dad, who was on Main Street in business for 38 years, had his building taken eminent domain by the town for a brand new, beautiful library, and that was really difficult for our family. But in the end, it actually ended up being a blessing for us because he could retire. And it was good for the town, too. So again, I don't know like what all the behind the scenes are, but I am concerned if we don't embrace growth, if we don't embrace the commerce, that it may skip us and go out to Groton or these other towns, and we'll be left going, oh my goodness. I actually hate it that whenever I need to go do major shopping, I have to go out of Littleton. Because, you know, with a family of 5, we have a lot of things we need to buy, and I would love for that money to stay here. But I just can't, right? And so it makes me a little concerned, and I'm so pro-growth because it's good. And if we can go out and court businesses that we want here so that we can choose the kind of groups that will be shopping here and what we get for our residents, it's a lot better than just going, oh my goodness, we missed the boat, we need Walmart, right? So again, nothing against Walmart, but it just is business-wise, right? So anyway, that's all I want to say.
I appreciate your thoughts and your input, your insight. It's always a delicate balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just us, it's all the departments, folks that work in this building, it's all the other regulatory boards, the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and prior to that, the Master Plan Committee. We try to be as collaborative as possible. We try to talk to each other so everybody knows what's going on in the Economic Development Committee. We do try to solicit the right development. The Point is a perfect example of that. I mean, if you look at the tax rolls with the hotel on it, the hotel not on it, we have a hotel tax, and the restaurants giving us the meals taxes. So there's I think some good things are happening in Littleton.
Do you have any more plans for other growth?
So we have meetings with potential developers pretty regularly. It's not something we necessarily advertise because some of the folks that are looking to develop in Littleton want to try to keep it close to their best, so that for competitive advantage. But we are very cognizant of growing, trying to grow smartly, and trying to do it in adherence with the master plan that we spent a lot of time, effort, and hours and dollars.
I just heard all the chatter about we hate how fast it's growing, we hate this, we hate that, and it's all the people that have lived here forever, which I totally get, right? Like my ancestors helped establish the town that I grew up in, and I thought I would live and die there, like everybody else around me, right? But it makes me so sad that they were so closed-minded to growth that it actually ended up hurting them. And to get any services, the new library, they had built this beautiful aquatic center, but all their taxes went sky high. And then even to use the aquatic center, you had to pay a fee, right? So even if you were paying your taxes, you still couldn't use it. So anyway, I just love Littleton. We're here for a long time, right?
Well, the fact that you're here is awesome. And keep asking questions. Keep poking us and saying, hey, what about this? What about this? That's what makes it work. That's what makes the system, keeps us accountable, and keep reaching out.
I appreciate that, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Two things.
Brett Jeffries, 3 Manchester, Family 5. We get Target. I don't have to leave Littleton, and ever. So Target.
I know,
equals
right?
success.
Target.
That's it.
Target, not Walmart, Target. I would love Target.
That's all I need. It'll solve all my problems.
Amen.
Question, I'm not sure if it's the appropriate time, but if I have a question about articles, should I do it now?
So I think it's, yeah, it is going to come up on the agenda, but I'm just going to answer you now because you're here, and if you have someplace else to be with your family 5.
Or if you want, we can hold this until the end of the meeting.
No, so it absolutely is something that is, you're talking about the,
Yeah.
Tax title.
tax title
Yeah.
properties.
Yeah.
It is something that we've discussed, and it's just an oversight, we just didn't get it on the draft.
Oh.
It's on there, it'll be on the next, right, is it already updated?
It will, the form of the warrant article could be inserted either 2 weeks from tonight or 4 weeks from tonight, so we'll coordinate with you so that you can be there for that meeting.
Thanks, the kids are in bed?
Okay.
It is public, though.
She's watching.
Anybody else that wishes to be heard?
Don't look at me, I'm just quiet. I have a plan to say later.
Excellent. Can't wait. All right, over to member updates. Mr. Glavy, you want to start us?
I'd love to jump all over the comments that were just made, and I think there's a lot of wisdom of what you were just adding to the conversation. The reactions to growth that people have, I think, oftentimes they get attracted to fool's gold of just saying no, we'll make everything stop in its tracks and the world will stop turning. Doesn't work. You got to proactively decide what you want and then engage them. You know, rather than just waiting to see what gets proposed and try to stop it or try to throw hurdles in the planning process to stop them. You know, we had a litigation that stopped what would have been a modest little mall that ended up yielding us the winning prize of a enormous car dealership. You know, that's what we got for fighting a small mall that I think people would have loved to have right now. That could have been our target or something like that. But you know, if we have more and more folks engaged through our master plan process and our regulatory board process, the whole key is just understanding if you want things, then as a community we should go out and get them rather than just waiting to see what's around the corner and try to say no to it. Anyway.
So I actually have a question with that.
No, well, we'll schedule some time for debate, and I shouldn't have jumped all over that. I don't want to be the one who threw us off schedule. This segment is more aligned for my following comments, like I want to congratulate the Littleton High School indoor track team for being the latest in our list of champions at Littleton High School. Okay, so there we go.
Well done.
All right.
All right, Cindy?
But,
Oh, you're done, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that was it. I just wanted to kudos to the track team. Yeah.
Great.
So I just wanted to let people know the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction has a meeting scheduled on the 22nd, which unfortunately conflicts with a planning board meeting that we had scheduled. But it's going to be at the police department between 5:30 and 7. We recently did a forum with Richie Farrell that I've mentioned in the past, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me that want to be part of the coalition. So if anyone wants to come by, they're more than welcome to on the 22nd, down at the police station at 5:30 on the 22nd, at the meeting room. And speaking of that planning board meeting, I just wanted to maybe ask a question. And we're talking about goals and commercial development and residential development. There is a project going on that's before the planning board that actually encompasses 3 of our goals. As selectmen, it's parking for the MBTA, economic development, and affordable housing. And I'm not certain that the entire board is apprised of that project. So I was wondering if, while you're meeting with the planning board on the 22nd and they have a regularly scheduled meeting afterwards, if maybe that would be a good opportunity for them to bring the board up
Yeah,
to
good idea,
speed
we can ask that.
on that
sure.
project, because I think it's a really good project. I always talk about West Littleton, my vision for Taylor Street, and I think this really could be a catalyst for that, so I just thought it might be a good opportunity for the board to
That's-
reach out to
Keeps
the
on it.
planning board and
We will
see
ask
if the
them.
timing will work.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Because the meeting on marijuana will be from 6:30 to 7:30, then they'll have a regular meeting starting at 7:30, and Maren came by today to say that that if there were other things we wanted to talk about, we could let her know.
Okay, great.
That's great. Just to, not to let the cat out of the bag, but the project that you're talking about, there's a developer that has expressed some interest in putting in, like you said, some parking. That would be a fee for service. It would be private parking, but people could rent spaces adjacent to the MBTA. There'd be a commercial component where there would be potential retail space out in front, whether it be a coffee shop, a dry cleaner, commuter type of sub shop, that kind of stuff. And then with a housing component in the back, right next to the train station, on what's commonly referred to as the Nordblum property. But it'd be great for us to all be apprised of that and to have it done with the planning board. That's the outreach to the board. It's great input, thanks.
Yep.
Just one minor thing, I think you guys were all CC'd on it, but working with Tom Harrington, we got some money from the insurance carrier who's doing the remediation of the oil release on 495, so the town can hire their own independent LSP professional to evaluate the site, make sure that the insurance carrier and the company who spilled the oil is cleaning it up to our satisfaction. Light and Water and Conscom are handling that. It's only a handful of thousands of dollars, no indication that anything's wrong, but now we have our own independent evaluation
Watchdog.
to make sure it's the way we want it.
Thanks for staying on top of that. Mr. Knox?
Just one thing, I just had the pleasure of going to a COA meeting today, and out in the audience, we have a member of Mary Picard of the COA. It's important because it's a transition period right now where the old director is out, and we had an interim come in, and the transition's taken place, but I just want to thank the strong COA and what they've done. Next weekend, next meeting, they'll be bringing in 2 more people to add on to their committee, 2 vacancies. And on top of that, I want to thank the people who were involved in between. I don't know what Janie's last name is, but Gutner. She did a phenomenal job in their transition period. She's staying on for a while to help the new director Liz out. Thank Tina, Nicole, and the whole group. And I want to point out that the COA, numerous times, and friends of the COA mentioned our friend here, our assistant town administrator, on all the hard work that he put in to make sure this transition period went smoothly, and I want to congratulate you. I sat there and said, well, he did a real fine job, because everyone complimented him on the work that was done.
It's because he gives them those little Hershey nuggets.
You know what draw they're in.
I do. You good? That's great. Thanks for
Joe.
Thanks for going with that. And, not to put anybody on the spot, but last Friday, we did have an opportunity to meet with the Mass DOT regarding the high school driveway, LHS high school driveway. And it's been kind of a patchwork. I initially had kind of gathered the troops, and we had a preliminary meeting to figure out what we wanted to hit MassDOT with. Paul stepped in for me, and then Joe stepped in last Friday and actually sat in on the meeting with MassDOT. I don't know, between the 3 of you, Keith, you and Anthony were there as well, right? So I don't know if between the 3 of you, you can give us some sort of an update on where we're at or what you're...
Look, I'll start up.
Okay.
Keith and Anthony can certainly fill in. We had a great contingent there. We had 2 people from the DOT, Joe Froley and Peter Kavachi. And our state senator, our state rep were there. The school committee was represented. Dr. Harrington was there. Anthony, Keith, myself, superintendent of school, the police chief was there, and the deputy chief. And there was a lot that was brought up of what we can do, we can't do. We don't meet certain criteria because there are not enough cars go through, and all those things go through. And that was all brought up, and I'll let them go on. But Dr. Harrington at the very end, after listening to the whole thing take place, and I don't know how he worded it, but he looked at the two guys from DOT and he said, why can't it be built? After all this, we have a real need. In the interim, they are going to do another traffic count, and it was asked, besides the traffic count, to have somebody there who could at least for one day visually see what the problems are. They talked about speed limits, putting a signs up that say school zone, have one of those speed monitors there that shows the speed of cars, because right now that blinking yellow light, even though it's up there, is doing nothing as far as speed goes. And I'll let you go on from
Well, I think the message that we relayed, and I want to thank the school department for putting together a great presentation with the assistance of the police, that even if we don't slavishly adhere to the 8 so-called warrants that MassDOT uses to determine when a signaled intersection is warranted. Nevertheless, this is a school. There are safety issues. There are underage or new drivers that since 2014, there's been a huge amount of development that has occurred in town, much of which goes right past there. There's been that the fleet of school buses now is based at the high school, so they're coming in and out, and that irrespective of whether we meet those criteria or all of them or not, we're not going away. This is an important thing. We're looking to be proactive. We don't want to have to, get the high points because somebody died at the intersection. That we can see a problem that needs to be solved, and we're going to continue to stay on top of MassDOT. And so it was a first meeting, but it won't be the last that we have engaging with them, and they know that we nag them.
I think that if we could, and I can pen it, or maybe we can collectively pen it, a thank you note to our legislators for showing up, as well as a letter to the gentleman from MassDOT that came out, and just gently reminding them that we're not going away.
Right, and we did, and an important part of what Joe being there is we did thank them for all that MassDOT does for us, because they have done a lot. We ask for a lot, we get a lot, but this is something that we're going to keep asking about.
Right. All right, thank you all for the updates and for stepping in when asked. Appreciate it. Okay, so next up on the agenda is the annual and special town meetings. We have to open warrants. So
There are some procedural motions tonight, mainly the first motion is to open the warrant and to set the closing date, which we had been doing it 45 days prior to town meeting. We moved it back to 38 days. We need all 45 days in order to get the voter information booklet out. It's taking us a little longer to have it published, so it's proposed that the warrant close on Friday, March 23rd. That would allow the board to determine the articles, the order in which they appear on March 26th, and we could get the warrant posted in the next day, and we could get you'd have a couple of meetings, March 26th and April 9th, to adopt recommendations on the articles, to get them out in the booklet. There are 3 opportunities at regular meetings for you to insert articles. There's tonight, there's 2 weeks from tonight, and then a month from tonight, and then that's it. I would make the suggestion, I put a list, I'd have to say a revised list of articles up on the board, and for those that I think are routine enough that you do them tonight, just to say we did, are shown in bold and in blue. So we've got 5 potential articles identified for the special town meeting. That's the town meeting that we have for business during the current fiscal year, and that We typically include a bills of prior year article and transferring line items between the current year's budget. I think you could do those, both of those. Other articles that you will want to consider, we do have some funding, close to about $200,000 that could be put from mitigation funds into the blended CPA, as we've been doing. We don't have enough to fully implement it. We've been putting in about $500,000. We've got a couple of $100,000 that we could put in. We should schedule a joint meeting with the Community Preservation Committee, either for 2 or 4 weeks from now, to discuss how that money might be divided up. If there are any items in the capital plan that you want to advance to have, we can look at the list of capital articles, and then if there are some that you want to spend prior to July 1st, then you can put them in this article. And we've identified in the plan borrowing $1.5 million for the smart sewer design, and no need to wait on that, and we could put that in the special town meeting warrant. We do have an article that's been drafted and approved by bond council on that as well in the draft. Then in the annual town meeting, a lot of routine articles, town officers, annual reports, revolving funds operating budget. We don't, you ought to review the enterprise fund budgets. We don't have those numbers yet before you insert the articles. That's water and park and rec. We'll be reviewing again with the Finance Committee tomorrow night the list of capital project articles. When we bring the Community Preservation Committee here to talk about the blended CPA, we can also discuss with them what projects that are they recommending for the upcoming year. There were a couple that Park and Rec had submitted that are proposed for funding. It's not, I don't think there's enough money to do both of those, so we'll have to talk about, is it, you're going to design a new field on Cooper Farm, or you're going to do the work at Long Lake Construction. So there's a discussion to be had there. I think we could insert an article for funding collective bargaining agreements. That's under the state statutes. When the town reaches an agreement with a new agreement with a union, you have to seek the incremental funding by vote of town meeting. And so we typically put an article, a placeholder article in, and then the motion that would be offered under that article would seek to fund any of the collective bargaining agreements that we have reached by the date of town meeting. And we're actively involved in meeting with the unions now.
And Keith, what if we were to not reach an agreement with a union by the date of town meeting?
It would go to the fall. It would go to the fall town meeting
without any particular problem.
No, but it's an amazing incentive to get an agreement by the Springtown meeting. So, so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do it. We do want to schedule an update on collective bargaining for the selectmen at your next regular meeting 2 weeks from tonight. Okay, personnel bylaw amendments. We should schedule the personnel board to come and talk to us about that for inserting the article, probably about a month from tonight, 4 weeks from tonight. I think you could insert the 3 articles for stabilization funds, because it doesn't say what the amount is, but rather just that we were going to put money into those, into the regular stabilization, capital, and debt exclusion stabilization. The trust fund commissioners will be meeting, and then after they've made a determination of what grant funds are being divvied up this year, we can insert that article. You could put in the article for the tax work-off abatement program for seniors and veterans. That's a routine article each year, and we also need an authorizing vote to spend Chapter 90 funds from MassDOT. Other articles that are on the horizon, the water commissioners have approached us about an article for easements for water supply. I need to follow that up with them. The zoning article for so-called adult use marijuana, also known as recreational use, also known as non-medical use. So we'll be meeting with the with the with the planning board on the 22nd of February. That's another motion. They've confirmed that date, but we can take a motion for joint meeting. And I'll get to that one a little bit when we get to that motion. The tax title property one, thanks for, we have the whole town to help us proofread the draft warrant, so we'll make sure that article is written. We are working on it, we know what needs to go in, but I need to have town council review it. And then loop around and talk with the Conservation Commission on who was involved with the last article. I put on this list an article we don't have officially yet, but we're aware that there's a voter petition to reduce plastic bag consumption, and Tracy Cutter, the petitioner, has been invited to and is able to attend the board's meeting 2 weeks from tonight to talk about that. Tracy attended the Sustainability Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. We'll be attending the Board of Health meeting tomorrow night. And we can get drafts of that document out to, it only takes 10 signatures to get it in a town meeting warrant. We're now having town council review the document. We will alert retail establishments in town. Thank you for the, we were wondering, as I was in a staff meeting, we were wondering who was going to compile the list of retail establishments, and then Selectman Napoli emailed it to us, so appreciate that. Let's see. So we'll have that discussion 2 weeks from tonight. The Historical Commission has requested an amendment to the town bylaw dealing the demolition delay bylaw to change the to lengthen the period of time. Look at the document from. It's currently 6 months. They were going for a longer period, but we should have them in to talk about that before you insert the article, so we can have them in either 2 weeks or 4 weeks from tonight. And then 2 routine articles, borrowing authorization and compensating balance agreement. I think you could insert those. So those articles that are shown in bold and blue, I think you could vote tonight, and then you could schedule further discussions about other articles for the next 2 meetings.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, when we last met with Finance Director Bonnie Fleck, the smart sewer design funding was part of the list of capital items, which is now on Article 7, which are all raise and appropriates of transfers. And I don't believe I remember any discussion of this being a borrowing article. Now it's a borrowing article on the special town meeting, and that didn't come out of any deliberation we've had that I'm aware of.
Well,
it's a significant difference.
I thought that the plan was to borrow
the construction phase.
To borrow the design with the expectation that it would be borrowed in such a way that we could roll it into the construction.
Well, we can roll it in no matter how we do it, but the presentation that was made to us, I can go back and check the records, I don't think proposed it this way.
It was under the capital plan.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it was on the capital
It
plan.
was it was in a capital plan article.
Now it's not. It's, it's a standalone. It's not on the annual town meeting. It's at the special, and I'm not sure it needs to be. But I thought that was a significant enough change that it should have happened as a result of a dialogue.
Certainly.
Obviously,
if
the
you
article
and
should be
Chase-
on there, but,
yeah, if you and Chase are not the drivers of that change, then I would question
Right.
the purpose. So Keith, if we can take a look at that.
Sure, we certainly can look at the funding source, and if there's a way not to borrow, then we can.
Well, there are ways not to
So-
borrow. We had a discussion about that. There are plenty of existing fund balances that it can be transferred fund. If this is a proposal, then it ought to
Was that
come with-
based on because there were 2 different design fund numbers floating around?
No,
The
this
first
number
one
was on the last.
1.5?
Yeah. I know early on in the process it was
Right, we
smaller.
had a much
That's been on-
smaller number that
but
was
this
much
number's
easier
been on
to
the table since early December, I think. I'd just like to know a little bit more about how that happened and why and what the other alternatives are.
And we can discuss those tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the capital plan and what the funding sources are. You bet. Yep. We can discuss it then. Yet another reason why it's not one of the articles proposed for insertion tonight.
Was that one of the reasons it wasn't?
Yep. Because we haven't discussed it.
As for.
Somebody's discussed it.
As for the instances where we need other boards to attend, either in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks, I'm comfortable with Keith and Anthony kind of slotting them in when they feel they're best prepared for it. Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
So, front point on that. Appreciate it.
Very good.
All right. So first up, we have, anybody have any questions about the bold blue suggestions? So that would be motion 1, I believe, right?
It's motion 2, isn't it?
Right, first we have to open the.
Yeah,
first we have to
motion
open
1
the
would be to open the warrant and set the
so-
closing date. Yep.
All right, so I'll entertain motion 1.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 10, and the Town Code, Section 41-1, to open the warrants for the Monday, May 7th, 2018 annual and special town meetings forthwith, and to close said warrants on Friday, March 23rd, 2018 at noon. Said town meetings to be held at the Charles Forbes K Gymnasium, Littleton Middle School, 55 Russell Street in Littleton.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Furthermore, I guess if we're all in agreement on the insertion of the articles as outlined and bolded on Mr. Bergman's presentation, I'll entertain motion number 2.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles into the town warrant, being the articles that were in blue and that we just discussed for the May 7th, 2018 annual and then special town meeting, subject to the approval as to form by town council.
Can you insert the specificity there, Mr. Bergman?
Can do. That will be bills of prior years, operating budget transfers, town officers, annual reports, revolving funds, FY19 operating budget, collective bargaining agreements, the 3 stabilization funds, tax work-off program, MassDOT, Chapter 90 funds, borrowing authorization, and compensating balance agreement.
Second. Do we have a second? We have a second, Mr. Glavy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right, so we do have the matter of the planning board meeting. We just have to make a motion to call that meeting.
Right, and they have confirmed that they can do 6:30 on the 22nd of February, which is a Thursday, and there are 2 things that we're looking at. A proposed zoning bylaw and potentially a proposed ballot question. That we've had some discussion before about how the new medical marijuana statute plays out, and if a community wants to limit either some of the uses, that is, right now we've only got, for albeit for medicinal, we've got cultivation site, we have no dispensaries. If you wanted to limit it just to cultivation sites and not allow dispensaries, that is the law says that because Littleton as a community at the November 2016 state election voted in favor of medical marijuana, you need to have another ballot question to limit the uses or to limit the number of licenses. Again, in our case, for medicinal marijuana, we've limited it to 1 license. If you wanted it to limit it to any number that's less than, you're required to allow 20%, at least 20% of your, the number of liquor licenses that you have. Yeah. So if you wanted to establish a level playing field, I don't know. But if you wanted to limit the number of licenses, that limitation also has to find expression in a ballot question. So, and what's more, the ballot question has to contain the language of the zoning bylaw. And the difficult part is they both have to read the same. So that we can go into a town meeting we really need to talk about the strategy of this, because if you write a bylaw that limits what you want, and you put that article in the town meeting warrant, you post the warrant, you put that in, you have to post a ballot question with the same thing. I'm not sure what we do if the floor debate amends it. Probably means you need to put the ballot question on a later election. Before we get there, we ought to really talk about, there's a lot of,
So there's a lot of communities that are going through this, so.
Yes,
let's,
yeah.
Reach out to
yeah,
MMA colleagues and
you bet, you bet,
find out
what the strategies are. Yeah.
When we're meeting with the planning board, would it be possible to have town council present? as
Chris
well?
Heap will be there.
He'll be
Yeah,
there? Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
There's enough details.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. That was on the plan. Okay, so as it sits right now, we have 7 off-premise liquor licenses, is that correct? Missing one or 2? Well, I have to look at the definition as well, because I don't know if it's full liquor or beer and wine. I forget the calculation. But if we went on the premise that it was 7, 20% is 1.4, it's less than 1.5, therefore, we would have to have 1. If it's 1.5 or greater, we have to have 2. So if it's, that's how I understand it. Am I wrong?
I can't do the math in my
Okay,
head.
so if it was 8 liquor licenses,
Yeah,
we would, by
If
the
it's-
CCC,
if the minimum is 20, if
We need
the minimum is
1.6.
20% of 10, I can do
2.
20.
There we go. But I think that when it gets to fewer than 10, 1.5 and greater, we need 2. Fewer than 1.5, we need 1. I'll have to go back and read it. but
Yeah,
that's-
Do they do
that's-
strict rounding, or do they just round up to the nearest whole number?
No,
'Cause some-
strict rounding. So we can figure.
Yeah, and I
the
think you
exact
may be
stuff out,
allowed, I
Chris.
think you may be allowed to have more, but that if you have the limit below a certain threshold, it requires a ballot question to do it, so.
And if we do nothing,
If you do nothing, then dispensaries will be allowed wherever retail.
Lack of zoning.
Wherever retail is allowed,
open zoning, basically.
right.
All right. So we need to schedule that meeting, so, Mr. Clerk, want to take motion 3?
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to schedule a joint meeting with the Planning Board for Thursday, February 22nd, 2018 at 6:30 relative to recreational marijuana zoning bylaw and ballot question.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work that went into that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, we're right up against 8 o'clock. We have 5 of.
my other question is,
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not what you were letting me know about?
was that, then at 8:15, that's a continuation, so we don't have to stop 8 o'clock hearing to go to the 8:15,
Correct.
right?
No.
So it's already been opened. Just a continuation, right? All right, so
Getting minutes out of the way or something
yeah,
like
it's
that.
Paolo?
Yeah, I saw Paolo.
You want to jump to minutes, number 10, maybe?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah, we can
is
do
the
that.
chief
9A.
here?
Chief?
Yeah.
You want to
Fire
give us
chief.
You want to give us a 4-minute summary on the FEMA Firefighters Association grant application?
We submitted an application last week in the hopes that we could have a little bit of luck on this round. Maximum that we're able to apply for the AFG grant is $1 million. So we put in for that, speaking with Finance Director Holston. We thought that it may improve our, excuse me, may improve our chances at increasing the mandatory 5%. So we upped that to 20%, which in the Fed's eyes, it gives you a much better opportunity at.
We have more skin in the game.
We have a little bit more, right? It shows the willingness on the town side that they, want to put in for it. Obviously, if for one reason or another, unable to fund it at this time. So it increases our odds. So should find out one way or the other sometime next fall. That's when they start their awards. So would be, like I said, we applied for $1 million. The town's portion of that would be a minimum of $200,000 to put in for that, and keep our fingers crossed.
Sweet. Thanks for doing that, and you did it on short notice too. It was like, hey, this might be an opportunity for us, and you jumped right on it, and you and the deputy probably helped you out a little bit. And
Tried, we got it in.
all hands on deck, and
Little of everybody.
got that out the door, so that's.
Super effort.
And that was $1 million, not 800,000 that you applied for.
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
So,
we had a math error, so.
yeah, sorry. That was our portion
Yeah.
that the grant would pay for.
For the previously identified need for a ladder truck.
Absolutely, yes.
So it costs 1.2
So
million.
currently, the ladder's, it's 30 years old, so, and it's still in service, and yeah, we can do whatever we can to work at getting some assistance at replacing that right now.
Let's, everybody, knock on wood, say a prayer, whatever you do to try to give us the right mojo to get that grant.
So you need a motion so we can end this before 8 o'clock.
Yes, please.
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize submission of a grant application of the Federal Emergency Management Administration under the Assistance to Firefighters Grant AFG program for $800,000, or should that be $1 million here, Keith? No.
Yeah, it should be.
For $1 million,
yeah.
the Littleton Fire Department to replace the 1988 Seagrave ladder truck with a local match of at least $200,000.
Second. Moving second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I second it,
Unanimous.
yes, all right, carry on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Appreciate the update. All right. We do have a public hearing. It's an application for Edward Gukasov, DBA Broadway, for a wholesale-only Class II license to buy, sell, exchange used motor vehicles at 45 Bulkley Road here in Littleton. So we,
Do you want me to read the?
you can come here. Do we need to have that read?
Yeah, the public hearing notice should be
Hearing
read.
notice?
Yeah.
Clerk?
Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, February 12, 2018, at 8 p.m. at the Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. 01460, to act on the request of Edward Gukasov, doing business as Broadway, for a wholesale-only Class II license to buy, sell, exchange used motor vehicles at 45 Bulkley Road, Littleton, Mass. 01460. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen's Town Administrator's Office at 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, by noon Friday, February 9th, or in person at the hearing. Board of Selectmen, Charles DeCoste, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay, so the hearing is now open. Mr. Gukasov?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to Board of Selectmen. The floor is yours, just if you could.
Well,
What's your
just like I
presentation?
submitted a letter, I've been a car dealer in Arlington, Massachusetts for 10 years, and unfortunately lease has expired, and I had to close my business. And at that time I purchased a house here in Littleton, moved in with my family, and I know there is such a thing in Massachusetts as state allows you to buy and sell cars wholesale, meaning dealer to dealer only. You don't have I don't carry a retail facility to store cars. I can just buy cars at auctions, sell to dealers, send it with the tow truck companies, transport cars wherever it is, as long as they don't come to my place, to my home, that's all.
Okay.
And I would like to see if you guys are willing to let me get that license here.
Okay. I'm pretty certain that we've got some questions for you.
Feel free
So-
to ask, yeah.
There's a number of people here that may have some questions as well, so anybody want to? Hippo?
Sure, I'll go. Hi, thank you for coming before us. So I do have a couple questions. I reviewed your application, and I did go to the website for your business when it was located in Arlington.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, it says there's now a website called Broadway Motor Sales.
Yes.
And it made a notation on the website that you did close the Arlington location, but that your inventory was now housed in the Powder Mill District in Acton.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, I had to move all the cars out of Arlington, and I had to store them somewhere. At some point, they were stored at Odessa Concord in Acton,
Okay,
and then I found a place. It's a Protec towing company. They have a big facility on Powder Mill Road,
okay,
2-4 Powder Mill Road. I rented a space there right now to store some cars there because I cannot just dispose 50 cars in a minute, you know.
right, right.
So people can get a good deal.
Right. So, but you're still actively marketing and selling those cars, because there is an inventory.
Yeah, basically, I still have valid license through Arlington that
Okay.
allows me to do that. I'm just, let's put it up that way, I'm in a position where I have to either do a transition from business to business, or I'll have to shut it down if nothing happens.
Right.
Basically, within short time, I will have to either find another location in Arlington, which less likely will happen, or I'll have to find some other ways to operate the business. And one of the easiest way I see right now is to do wholesale.
Okay, so right now your retail business is
Yes.
still active?
Yes.
But you intend to close the retail business and just do
As soon as I'll get
wholesale?
some, yeah.
Okay, all right. So the other question we have is, there's some requirements for a Class 2 license, and one is posting a bond
It
for a
was
Class 2
posted,
license. You
yes.
have that?
Yeah, I submitted to the town.
You submitted it to the town of Littleton?
Yeah.
Okay. And how about a repair facility? Do you have access to a repair facility?
I've been working with couple shops. One of them is in Cambridge. It's Fresh Pond Mobile.
Okay.
You may call the owner. His name is Eli. He knows me very well.
Okay, and so use him. All right, so the other question was, just reviewing your application, your statement that only cars that will be in the lot are the ones you drive, you and your wife drive for business?
Yeah, basically I buy cars. Sometimes I go pick up cars myself, and I transport them from place to place, and I end up driving them. Therefore, I don't have my own personal vehicle.
Okay.
Because I'm using dealer plates and moving cars from place to place.
Okay, so we can anticipate that would be one car for yourself and one car for your
Yeah,
wife?
2 cars, that's what we use.
2 cars?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you anticipate any customers coming to your home?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
Okay.
It's in my own interest not to have customers at my
Okay.
home.
All right. And I think that was all my questions.
Lady?
My questions aren't so much for Mr. Kukasov as they are for administrator, police chief, or whoever, just to make sure the assertions made here, whether we can enforce those through our license, that there won't be any activity on site as far as storage of vehicles beyond what Mr. Kukasov has said he would do.
Town council has offered the opinion that the board can limit, in the license, you can limit the number of vehicles. At the premises, you could establish it at 0, if you wished. And we did get some written guidance from council this afternoon.
And this license, just to be clear, doesn't allow the applicant to any form of advertising or any of that kind of other business, I mean, physical advertising on the site or anything like that, right?
It does not. It's and the building commissioner has indicated that if it's like a business only and it's inside the house, it qualifies as a customary home occupation.
Which is, if I remember, allowable to like 1 employee plus the...
Yeah, as an accessory use, but
use,
not as a
right.
primary use.
Okay. At some point, I'd just be interested to hear what the citizens have to say, and then have more to say during the, we get around to deliberating it. Yeah.
Mr. Gregory?
I don't have any comments right now.
Comments, okay. Mr. Knox?
Well, just before we turn over to the public, my same concern was what Paul had too. Whatever we do, I want to make sure we put down restrictions to make sure that extra cars can't get stored at your lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I concur. So you said you posted the bond,
Yeah, I dropped it off at the
building inspector, or who would that go to?
selectmen's, wherever I paid for the license fee.
Okay. Okay. Up on the third floor, the
Yeah.
woman behind the counter? Okay.
I think
We'll
it's,
check with Diane.
right here
Yeah,
is
that's
a
fine.
copy, actually, probably, 1 second.
No, that's, we can check that easily enough. That's okay, thank you. All right, so I don't really have any other questions for you. I think that we're going to generate some questions by allowing folks to speak. It is a public hearing, so we can get their input. You're welcome to stay there, you're welcome to sit in the chair, wherever you're most comfortable. But I will just caution people that if you do want to be heard, just raise your hand, and I'll call on folks. Just give us your name and your address, and any comments should be directed through the chair, not necessarily through the petitioner. Appreciate that.
Hi, Stephen White, 43 Bulkley Road. What exactly is permitted on a Class 2 license, and how many vehicles are allowed to be in any residential area that aren't registered?
So there's a couple questions there that you're speaking specifically to an owner of a Class 2 license?
Yeah, if I wanted to get a Class 2 license, what does that permit me to do?
You want to go?
It permits you to operate the business of selling used cars, and the Board of Selectmen can limit the number of vehicles by virtue of this licensing process. Not exactly a random sample, but we have Jake's Auto Body, which is at 1 Adams Street, which is limited to no more than 20 vehicles. We have Ray's Classic
But that's
Cars
not
at
a
182
residential area.
Hartwell,
This one is the
which
Ray's.
is limited to 6 cars.
Are those residential areas?
Hartwell is.
Top of that is, yeah, Ray's.
But in this case, we have the applicant saying that that the number of cars he needs is 0.
So it's not,
2.
yes, I mean, in all likelihood, we would allow for a car for himself, a car for his wife, and we can allow up to 1 accessory for an employee if he had an office in the home and he had
Okay.
an assistant that came in and worked at his home on a daily basis. It'd be, in essence, it'd be 3 vehicles on the property. That we can limit that. We have the authority to limit that. So whether
And what
license-
defines wholesale?
Pardon?
What would define the wholesale? You know, what's the difference between, if you're selling a car, you're selling a car, you're trying to make as much money as you can on it, so to me, it's mostly retail.
I'll
I
let
can
the
try to
petitioner
define
answer
that.
to the best of his ability.
In state of Massachusetts, to sell retail car, you have to have a retail license. Therefore, you have to be registered with Department of Transportation, and you cannot just sell a car and the customer won't be able just to go and register. The wholesale license, again, in state of Massachusetts, allows you to buy a car. You cannot retail a car. Therefore, if you sell a car to a retail customer, when customer goes to the registry, he won't be able to register it. It gives you only an option to sell it in the wholesale market, from dealer to dealer, or,
Another wholesale?
yeah.
Okay. That's it.
But that's not the type of license.
Does that answer your question?
Not really. Still, on the Class 2 license,
Okay.
you can sell retail or wholesale.
No.
No.
Wholesale.
We've confirmed that?
For this license application, it will be wholesale.
That's confirmed. That's-
The
that's
others-
where the-
the
where the-
oth-
There's
where the
no,
authority-
Mass RMV does not issue a separate Class 2, you know, it's only, you can do both. I mean, this is
It's
a,
not separate.
We're the licensing
I know,
authority.
I know.
Yeah, they
So I-
put the restrictions on it.
So I have one more question for the applicant, but right now you hold a retail license, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so.
In Arlington.
In Arlington.
yes.
And it has to stay, you have to, any of those transactions have to take place in Arlington. So you could go rent space in Arlington and continue to retain that license, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So what happens with moving your inventory that's in Acton, though?
Basically, any dealer has, like, if they have certain amount of cars, like the light town of Arlington allows me to store 50 cars in Arlington to be displayed for sale. I may have 70 cars, therefore, how come 70 cars? I have 50 cars for display and 20 cars that we just purchased, they're still at auctions or coming from Texas or wherever, you know. depends where we bought it. And those cars are being transported to our facility. While they're transported, some cars getting sold, and there is new place for other cars. That's how it is. And the wholesale dealer license will just allow me to buy and sell without having to store cars anywhere, you know? That's all.
Right, but, so right now you have cars in Acton though, and you have a location in Arlington that you...
My location in Arlington, I still have the license in Arlington. I don't have a location anymore.
Right. I guess my question is, so what happens with the inventory in Acton?
It will be transferred from, let's say, I'm keeping same name, Broadway, just like it used to be. I will transfer the titles to the different company and just sell them wholesale, that's all. Because in March, the registration will be sent to all dealers. We have renewal registration every year, and I will have to submit that I lost the place in Arlington.
Okay.
So that's why it is. After March, I will have to try to figure out the ways to do it, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
So if you could answer this one, so if in March you don't find another space in Arlington to continue a retail operation in Arlington, that license goes away, so you're not able to...
Most likely, yeah. The town probably will allow me some sort of a grace period until I get rid of all the cars or whatever. It will be based on the town, I guess, yeah.
Any questions for anybody?
So logically, then after March, if you're left with only, say you got a wholesale license here, you'd continue to store them in Acton because you wouldn't have permit to do it here, but you'd use your wholesale license to sell them to other dealers and diminish your stock that way.
Exactly. And anyway, the storage in Acton, it's just a temporary thing, so I believe I won't even need the storage in the future. Just buying from auction to auction, that's all, to dealer load, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara Olafson, 49 Bulkley Road. I guess my question is, if he has a location in Acton where he is storing cars right now, why doesn't he just sit his license there at that address so that it's not in a residential address or neighborhood?
I can't answer that question for you. Sir, if you'd like to answer it.
In order to apply for a license, you have to have a special zoning that should allow you to buy and sell cars. If I would have applied for, let's say, a wholesale license, I would have to have some sort of an office there. That place where I'm renting space, there is no office there. And it's not me who come up with the idea and concept selling cars through home. I know some other people doing it, some people who works in the business of exporting cars, or again, being in consulting business when you buy, being a representative of other dealerships from other states to buy and sell cars, because right now a lot of cars are being sold online. Some customer buying cars online without even seeing the cars. There's so many internet tools available for buyers. When you advertise a car, customer just looks it up on the internet, buys it, clicks the button, and the cars get shipped to him. That's all. So I cannot apply that because the zoning doesn't permit to apply there. So it's cheaper for me to start to doing from my home right now.
We couldn't build an office there?
Huh?
You can't build an office there?
Through the chair.
I know.
Through the chair, please.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I approach? Sure. Okay. I mean, most of my comments were covered by some other questions, but I did.
Just identify.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca Craven, I live at 45 Bulkley. The neighbors were concerned that he does still have this retail website up. And what we noticed was some of the cars for sale on the website were taken in his yard. Photos of the cars for sale are taken in his driveway. So we feel like what he's putting forth to this board is a little disingenuous, and that he probably does plan to put cars up for sale that people can come and buy in his yard. So I did bring some photos. I don't know if that, I've never been to one of these hearings. Is that something you can submit to the board?
Yeah, pass them around.
So, This is from the neighbor, and then this is a car for sale that matches the garage. And the same here, this is a shed on his property, and this is the car for sale in front of that shed, so. Is that okay?
Absolutely,
Okay.
it's absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me just interject. He is allowed to, he has dealer plates.
Right, yeah.
His car, his wife's car, even his employee's car could potentially be running
Right.
a dealer plate because he's transporting them. So, like a lot
Yeah,
of
I
dealers
understand. I mean,
car.
we're concerned, we do not want this type of business in a residential neighborhood.
Got
So, I mean, we would ask the board to limit it to 0, as suggested. We feel like all the other dealerships are on Great Road and Air Road, and this is a scenic road registered in the town. It's no streetlights, no sidewalk. We like the residential rural, it was part of the Burbridge Farm. I mean, this is really, why we moved to this small road. So we really would encourage him to use Acton, use a commercial space, and I understand you can do whatever you want, but that's why we're here, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming up. Thanks. Yeah.
Gail Murray, 46 Bulkley Road. I saw some paperwork that said that 40% of the business was wholesale, and so it leads me to wonder, well, where is the other 50–60% of the business that I'm assuming would be retail, and what is the plan for that? Because I can't help, I'm just as concerned as everyone else to keep the character of our very residential street. And someone opening a business that the website looks more retail than wholesale, I can't help but wonder that he's going to want to increase the business and that it'll become more retail looking. And so I'm wondering what the plan is for that.
So I'll just say that, again, as the licensing authority, assuming we did go forward and allowed for the operation to happen there, we would, there's policing that would have to occur. And, if the operator were in violation of what we allowed, then we could take action from that point as the licensing authority.
Including revoking the license.
Including revoking the license, yes.
But how much proof, how much evidence would need to happen? What would the process be? I'm just concerned that it would turn into a big, long, oh, let's have a meeting and let's get some evidence and let's come back, and next thing you know, a year has gone by and there's all this traffic going up and down the street.
Yeah, how long is it going to clean up the old depot?
Right. Did you hear that comment?
No, I didn't. I'd rather not hear those comments. There's someone else that wants to be heard, but guys, you can't have that kind of conversation. It has to be part of the public record, so we can't be, little sidebars amongst ourselves. Gail, the petitioner raised his hand while you were speaking. You mind if I ask him?
Certainly.
I just want to tell to all neighbors who came up, if you feel that this type of business will bring some sort of potential uncomfort to the street, that's why we have a meeting here. You can make a decision that you guys don't want that. I'm absolutely okay with that. Whatever I'm trying to do right now, I'm looking for my own interest, first thing first, okay? Because I have a family, I have to support my family and have to make money. That's all. If you guys think that this is not the right way for the community, I totally understand that. I'm not gonna try to go meeting after meeting to try to get that license, So if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, I'm absolutely okay with that. No hard feelings, for sure.
Appreciate that. All right, sir. You want to say your comments?
Oh, I'm just Corey Stack, 40 Bulkley. The question was, as we run into sort of situations where you have things that need to get dealt with or cleaned up, my comment was, how long is it going to take to get something done about the old depot, as an example. So there's several things in town that once we've gotten ourselves into, find it amazingly difficult to get ourselves taken out of. And I was just pointing that out.
Appreciate the insight.
What's the old depot? What do you mean?
David Erickson's place.
Well, yeah, that's a zoning issue more than anything else. It was zoned in 53. It's zoned industrial. We would love to be able to take care of that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Get something, you set up one thing and find yourself inextricably there for decades.
I would point out here that licenses like this do have to be renewed actively every year. Not only is there an action that we could take if the petitioner was in violation of his license. But furthermore, every year, we need to actively renew that license. And so there's an opportunity for public inputs to go through that process. Again, even if it's something that doesn't rise to the level of a violation, but is
Just not working out.
just not working out.
Is it yearly or bi-yearly?
Yearly.
It's annual.
I apologize if this was already explained, but this is very new information to me. It's not my line of business. What does a Class 2 license require? Is there a copy of it that you have that I could see so I could try to understand it? I'm not familiar with what it actually is. Does it require a storefront? Does it require certain things? Does the town of Littleton, since the town is considering granting it, you must have a copy of it, I'm guessing.
I do have a copy, I'm sorry.
But does the town have it? How?
Of course we do, yes, we do. I'm looking in our packet to see if I have one available for you to be able to take my iPad and take a look at it, but I don't. So, we all, I think each of us.
It wasn't on the website.
Yeah, well, it's a state license where the license is.
I tried Googling it like crazy.
Chapter 140, section 58.
Would you like to see from Arlington?
No, I'd like to see the Littleton one.
No, I'm just saying.
It's Mass General Law, chapter 148.
No,
140, sections 58 through 59.
Okay.
So it's Mass General Law, but we have, just like with liquor licenses. We are the Alcohol Beverage Commission.
Right.
When there's a liquor license to be issued, but it has to go to the state in order to get approved. So we can say, yeah, no problem, go ahead and serve alcohol, and then the state can say, no, you're not gonna do that. So, similar, not identical, but similar in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's under Mass General Law that we have the ability to issue the license. We're the granting authority and we're the policing authority, but it's a license through the state. Police chief has some comments. Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, what's been done in the past is when the board has approved a class 2 or one of these classes, if there's violations, the police department goes down, notes it, puts it in a report, forwards it to the board, and the board then takes immediate action on the violation once we notify about it. We had a problem before in the Neshoba garage, it was in the Neshoba garage. There was a problem over there. They were having more vehicles than they were supposed to. We went over there, documented the situation. The same thing happened on Adam Street before it was Jake's Auto Body. Police department goes down, notes the violations. We do rely on neighbors and other people to call us and tell us that there's violations going on, but we also do let the patrols know, you know, what is allowed under the licensing for these different, groups. There aren't that many of them in the community. But again, what we do then is we immediately notify the board of the violation, and the board always typically takes it up within 1 or 2 weeks of the, of the notification, and then renders their decision, whatever, maybe suspend the license, modify the license, hey, you knew there was 0 cars allowed there to be sold, you're selling cars there, we're taking your license. So, just so everyone knows, that's how the board has acted in the past with the town.
And I put on the screen here, that this is an excerpt of the state statute that town council had prepared for the selectmen's guidance tonight. And it requires that the selectmen as the licensing board satisfy themselves that the applicant's a proper person to engage in the business, that the business is or will be his principal business, and that he has a place of business suitable for the purpose. And upon, if those 3 are established, then there's the further requirements of posting a bond and demonstrating access to repair facilities. That's what the statute, that's the framework that we're operating under.
Some of the questions that Selectman Napoli was asking were specifically, do you have a repair shop that is?
I heard that, yes.
Some of these criteria were, some of those were what Cindy was asking for.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that he met the criteria in order, in the event that we did decide to grant the license.
Mullen. Russ Mullen, 48 Crane Road. I guess I'm just a little concerned with the potential of extra delivery trucks, in the neighborhood.
Burn. We've talked about it being a scenic road. You know, we've been burdened, it's a blessing to the town, but we've been burdened by extra traffic with the rail station. We've got the growth facility at the top of the street. You know, little by little, the pressures on our neighborhood are changing, you know, rapidly. And so I guess my concern is that even though we're talking about 50 to 70 vehicles turning in the course of the month, how many trucks are dropping them off and taking them away, even if there's only a couple on the street? But that'd be a concern of mine. You know, how does that stop? And again, if you've taken a drive down Buckley Road lately, you won't want any more truck traffic going down there.
So there wouldn't be deliveries. It would be a wholesale only, so there would not be deliveries at that address.
So it doesn't come
It would
there?
be mostly online, from what I can understand, and what I've gathered from doing some research for other people that do this. My nephew happens to be looking into doing this. So I had a subject matter expert in a different town. My sister's thrilled. But, yeah, so there wouldn't be trucks delivering the 50 vehicles. Those 50 vehicles are germane, but not germane. They're not like those 50 vehicles are going to be coming to Bulkley Road. Those 50 vehicles.
We can put that limit on the license.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we can put those.
I kind of saw it like one car at a time on a flatbed, you know, often, not like one of the car carriers that are going down to the tracks.
I see what you're saying. So, apologize, sir. Would you be receiving delivery of any vehicles at all on flatbeds, like one in the driveway, or?
Well, most likely no, because again, I'll be buying the way. It's very hard to explain in 1 hour even how the whole business works. Okay. Let's put it that way. Whatever, I moved to 45 Bulkley about 3 months ago. Whatever you guys see me driving different cars on and off, it's just part of my business. I work that way. That's how I make money. If I'm granted this license by the town, there will be no changes. There will be no more new trucks coming in with lots of cars because first thing first, a lot of transportation companies, they're not going to come on that street because I guess trucks are not allowed on the street. So they're not going to drive onto it. And I can always meet and drop off a car at, let's say, Odessa Concord is the closest option. So I don't think there will be anything like that, you know.
Would you be open to us limiting no commercial vehicles delivering vehicles to your property? If we were. Okay.
We can put that on license as well. Okay. And again, if town thinks that it's not right, I'm absolutely okay with that as well.
Appreciate reiterating that.
Basically, what he's asking for is to have an office and to basically have an address for his license, I believe, is what it boils down to.
I believe you are exactly correct. That's how I perceive it, and I actually just made a comment to Mr. Gervin. Chief, you could probably comment on this. There's a number of licenses for dealers for a different industry out of 410 Gray Road address, where I'm pretty sure they're just renting a drawer in a file cabinet. I'm not entirely sure how that's operating, but.
So you wouldn't see cars there with for sale signs on them and whatnot?
We can limit all that.
We can limit that.
And can we be assured that there would be no one coming in just to do paperwork, drop off a check, anything like that also? This particular area, I think one of the pictures shows the blind driveway sign, and this particular home is a very narrow, steep driveway, and you would not want anyone coming in for anything.
People are allowed to have home businesses,
Right.
even, so that's probably beyond the scope of the board to say no to that. I mean, we could say no to this license application, but everybody's entitled to have a home business, even up to including one accessory employee outside of the home. I don't think we can cite that as a condition.
I think we could, but I think that, you know, he could go to the zoning board of appeals and say, until agreed by the decision of the board of selectmen. Because he is entitled to a livelihood, should we issue a license. saw some other hands, sir.
Hi, Jeff Chambers, 52 Bulkley. Did a little searching online. There was, this is for the applicant. The applicant is one of 3 owners of a place called Wheeler Dealer on Powder Mill that applied to the town of Acton for a Class 2 license. I'm interested in finding out why that wasn't granted and why isn't he using that? Or if this is a different business and is he still affiliated with this Wheeler Dealer? Because I don't know what the trajectory here is in relation to that business and whether he's going to take ownership or those cars or if he's going to completely divest themselves of that interest.
I think that is also beyond our scope. If you're willing to answer it, I'll let you answer it.
I mean, yeah.
I've been not just selling cars, I've been in this industry over 10 years. For 10 years I owned a dealership, now I'm dealership in Arlington. Before that I was managing regional manager for dealers from different states, because that's about 15 years ago when the market started changing and internet starts crushing the industry. What happened, people know me with my experience in this industry, and I do consulting services. Let's say tomorrow you would like to open up a used car dealership somewhere, you can contact a person like me who can help doing all the work. And the way it works, in order for me to start up a company for you, I would ask you to create a corporation where you sign me as a secretary of that corporation so I can act on your behalf. Once the company is established, you just remove, I get my commission to help you out, and you remove me from your corporation.
Okay.
If you can call
So you can't
Wheeler
use
Dealer,
that license?
you can call, as an example, you put a name Wheeler Dealer in Acton, you can call right now Secretary of the State and see that Edward Lukasov was removed as a secretary from the Wheeler Dealer, okay? I've been acting as consultant to establish the business to set up because I know all the procedures that goes there, that's all.
Okay, so, yeah, okay, that's where I was trying to get to, why you couldn't use that license and you wanted to establish a different license. I just didn't understand that.
No, I totally understand.
Okay.
So you're named with the Secretary of State under a number of different licenses for that reason, because of the consulting services that you provide?
Basically, in order to talk to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, I cannot just talk as a manager of the company. You have to be an owner or officer of the company. Therefore, people call me for consulting. It wasn't just recently. I helped establish 2 dealerships, one in Maynard, one in Acton. And on both of them, I was added as a secretary. That's how it is.
Thank you. So is the wholesale business or is not your primary business?
It's my primary business. That's why I'm
Principal
applying under my name. I'm not doing corporation, as you can see. I'm doing this as DBA, doing business as. This is something to have as my own backup plan. Just what happened right now. Lease has expired. Landlord told me 4 times more rent. I couldn't afford, you know. So I had to move out and look for something else.
Tonight. Mike Fontanello was calling out Arlington earlier. All right, Spy Ponders. Anybody else wish to be heard? Police or fire chiefs? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm Carolyn Stahl, I'm on 20 Crane Road, and I'm not opposed to having somebody make a livelihood, but I just want it to be looking like a neighborhood, you know, no signs, no traffic, no increase in traffic, you know. So I prefer there be 0 cars allowed, you know, as part of this business.
Thank you. Either of the chiefs have any comments?
No issue with the file.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please.
If I may just say. As far as repairs of the vehicles that you or your wife may be driving that are on your property, do you anticipate the need to perform repairs on your property where this license will be located?
No, unless the tire goes flat.
Sure. But you're not making substantive improvements to the vehicles
No,
in your own garage
No, I'm
and then
not
turning
planning
around?
to fix cars for the purpose of the business in my garage because I have 3 kids. The only thing I can try to show my kids how to remove the tire of the car and stuff like that, you know, that's all.
Okay.
It will be no operations to repair cars.
So, you good?
Yep.
Just not some further questions? Dave, any other comments, questions?
Close the hearing and get into deliberations, right?
You good? Before we close the hearing, does anybody else? Last chance.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Gretchen Webster, 33 Bulkley. This is just for my own edification. Does a wholesale business in the town of Littleton generate any tax income for the town? It's just retail?
No sales tax.
Just the license fee.
Just, okay, just curious.
The property tax, there would be some, if they're running, like, if anybody's running a small business out of their home and they use that as their address on their tax returns and stuff, like, give me more guidance here, but, the assessor's office, pardon me?
Our real money's in the retail.
Yeah.
Retail.
So there might be if they have, office equipment or something like that in the home.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing.
So we got that $100 license.
We'll probably get a couple dollars.
We spent it in the first 15 minutes.
All right, everybody good? All right, I'll take a motion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, we are closed, folks. So, as far as deliberation, anybody have any thoughts, ideas?
My first blush is it's been a while, but we've been down this road a couple of times before, at least the town has, with people holding these licenses for this purpose in a residential neighborhood, have not had problems, and knowing that we can put as many restrictions on it as we can, and knowing that we can revoke it as quick as those are violated or not approve it for renewal, I would be inclined to try to work out granting the license with all the restrictions on the making sure there's no advertising outward, there's no delivery on site, there's no mechanical repair or body repair on site, all that stuff. Anything you agreed to. Just if it is what Mr. Picasso says it is, then fine. It should just work. And if it isn't, we'll know about it probably the day it happens, and that'll be the end of that. So. That's my inclination.
Right.
Appreciate your input.
Yep, I agree with Mr. Clavey. I think we can put enough contingencies and restrictions on stipulations on the license itself that we can make this work.
Nothing to add at this point. With conditions, I can support it.
Okay.
Even after what our police chief said and made the point that if they saw it right away, they could bring it to us within 2 weeks and we can act on it within 2 weeks. It's not like it'd be a whole year before anything could be solved. We can revoke it within the 2 weeks. And like Mr. Glavey said, if we put all those restrictions on it, then I don't have a problem with it.
Also, the building commissioner has said that if there's if there are violations of the zoning bylaw, he can issue cease and desist order as well. Immediately, yeah.
So there's our muscle.
Right.
All right, so it seems like we've got a general consensus as long as there are stipulations and conditions. Let's kind of play through and walk through this.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I do have 2 conditions that I would want to make sure that we actually have that bond. And I would also want to see written documentation of the repair facilities. I understand that we could probably call someone and they would affirm that, but I'd rather have an email or a letter or something like that.
It's incumbent upon him to present it.
Yeah, exactly. You present us that evidence, plus the other restrictions that we put
makes
together.
sense.
But as far as the requirements of the license, I want to
Make sure we
dot the i's, cross the t's.
diligence. It's good input. All right, who's taking the best notes?
I see Mr. Glavey's doing it right.
I'm just trying right now. It's all subject to obviously the bond, and the other licensing assertions being
I thi-
completed and accurate.
Right, I think the number of vehicles, limiting the number of vehicles. You had indicated you would need a vehicle, and your wife would need a vehicle, so we could limit it to 2.
Do you have more than 2 dealer plates?
There's 3. There's 3, I mean, we could,
No truck deliveries, no sales on site, no repair or body work, to be conducted on the premises. No advertising, flags, lights, banners, or any sign of a business, like those kind of things.
right.
Transactions on site?
No, he indicated he didn't need it, so I'd say, yeah, no sales transactions on site. You weren't intending to do that anyway, right, sir?
All over the phone.
Yeah,
People come
fine.
to my phone.
You can go to their house, right? Yeah, right.
Put that limitation into that. So it looks like we're just penning the motion, and it'll go to a vote, but it seems like we have consensus that we will be granting a license with conditions. Again, it's renewable annually, and we will do our best to make sure that the regulatory authority that we have and the police and the building inspector will keep an eye out, but you guys are right there. It's in your backyard. This is your neighborhood, so I would deputize you all to let us know, and I'm sure you will.
I was taking notes as Mr. Glavy was
Yeah.
speaking, so just, I can edit those.
The only other thing was no
Signage?
transactions.
No transactions.
On site,
okay.
yeah.
All right, oops, sorry.
Yeah,
Keep
the
that up.
advertising's
You
would
keep
be
that up for a moment.
signage and whatever it is, flags, banners, any kind of.
Transactions, signage,
Lighting,
lighting.
Yeah.
additional
Right.
lighting, yeah.
I gotta stand.
I'm getting up sometimes.
Put that, okay.
Just can't feel my left leg. Other than that, I'm great.
Hey, maybe he's got a vehicle with a heated seat or one of those lumbar supports.
Thank you. All right,
Just
just look.
grab that.
Can you guys see through me? We haven't voted yet, folks.
They've moved and seconded. They've moved on.
All right. All right. Well, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Sections 58, 59, to approve the application of Edward Gukasov, DBA Broadway, for a wholesale-only Class 2 license to buy, sell, exchange used motor vehicles at 45 Bulkley Road, Littleton, subject to the following restrictions: number of vehicles limited to 2, no truck deliveries, no transactions on site, no repair on site, no advertising, signage, lighting, or banners. With issuance of the license, subject further to documentation of the bond and repair facility required by statute.
Second?
All right, we got a motion that's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. So there are some things that you have to bring to us now.
us know how it
So we need, yeah, if you go up and see Diane up in the town administrator's office, that'd be great. And the conditions will be laid out for you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good luck. Welcome to Littleton.
Are we going to take up the space needs study?
Yeah. You know what to do.
No, it was just a question, I guess.
All right, let's see, where are we, Class 2? All right, so we do have the additional public hearing.
Never-ending hearing.
Pardon me?
The never-ending hearing.
Yeah, so,
How about item 5 then?
town and building space needs?
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna need 20 minutes for that, right? I mean,
I apologize for.
Goal updates will go fairly quick, too, I would
jumped that
think,
because it
right?
was 8 o'clock.
We can
Well,
do 'em.
tonight, yeah.
Yes, so,
It'll be 9:30.
Right.
town building and space needs analysis.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Chris, sorry, you're gonna hang in there a little bit longer, okay?
Well, I don't, whatever.
hey, the DPW director's in
Staying overnight.
space needs study, hey?
Correct. All right, so we, so we,
Not even for 1 second.
we had a presentation that identified the needs, and we had some conversations around that, and we felt it necessary to establish a working group for long-term and short-term planning. And in our packets, we've got kind of an outline of what some folks that we feel would be included. It's kind of a big group, but we want to be inclusive and make sure that we have, I'm going the wrong way. So the first draft would be at least one member of the Board of Selectmen. So there's 11 members of it if we go with the folks that I'm going to read right now. Member of the Board of Selectmen, member of FinCom, member of COA, member of the Board of the Library Trustees, member of PRCE Commission. Also include Assistant Town Administrator, DPW Director or appointee, Treasurer.
That's on record.
It has to be voted. There might be an amendment on the floor. Town Treasurer, Director of the Library, Director of Elder and Human Services, and Director of Park, Recs, and Community Education. So that's 11.
We're still missing PMBC in schools and that, I don't know.
And I had another
If
request.
we want to,
How do you do this and not have,
yeah,
Pardon me?
how do you do this building thing without including the PMBC, or for that matter, the schools, you're right. I had two earlier points, those are Chase's points, I'll let him make his own argument, but I agree with him.
as long as people are agreeing, I'm happy to just.
Anytime we're appointing committees that involve employees of town, I just think they ought to be ex officio, non-voting members. They're there as employees of the town, and I see a distinction between that and people who are on elected or appointed boards who are representing citizens. The other point is, I mean, this is essentially, I don't mind the structure as long as we're conscious going into it that it is a bit of an echo chamber. These are all folks who are, occupy these offices or are directly affected by them, and it's not it's not an outside view of things. It's how big would you like your office, and what do you?
No, we're relying on FinCom to hold everybody accountable here.
Well, there's limited between the selectmen and FinCom, that's about it. I mean, as far as outside eyes, to the extent that they are, not even, selectmen, I guess, since we have an office upstairs, but, I'm okay with that, if this produces some documents, as long as we don't pretend that that's like, this is what the town came up with. No, this is what the folks who occupy the town hall came up with, And that's okay.
No, I'm okay, I'm with you, So,
I had a request today, too, from a member of the Master Plan Committee that they thought that they should have somebody on that committee, too, since they were involved in this type of space study, too. So there's another one there.
Well, I have an opinion on that. We didn't discuss that, other than just I gave an update of this report at the last meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Well, that's right. I did email you earlier today.
I saw that.
I didn't know whether you got it. I was asking for what your thoughts were on.
They may be different from the other members. We haven't decided as a group. I think the Master Plan Implementation Committee is, and I know Mike wants to jump in here, ought not to start metastasizing all over other committees, because theoretically, we could be appointed everywhere, because that's the whole point. We should be prodding all these committees to do their job, that we should be showing up at all these meetings, but I don't know that we need to have a seat on every committee.
I agree with you.
That's my opinion. Mike may have Chuck, but I don't know. Mike may have a different opinion on that. I don't know if you want to go there or not.
I don't agree with him, so I'm not calling him.
Yeah, he even doesn't know what I'm going to say, which is really, Mike Zeldin, 11 Luann Street. Let me make it clear that, as Mr. Levy has pointed out, he is a member of MPIC, and this is not a solicitation for MPIC to be on yet another. We have enough to, our job is not to sit on other people's committees and do things. I have a more serious problem with this committee, and I think you can remedy it. And that is that we do have a town that's approved money to hire someone to help the town's professionals revitalize the common. This building and everything that goes on into it is part of that. So all I'm going to ask and plead with you is to include a requirement of this group that you may or may not form to make contact with, exchange information as part of their mandate with the, quote, consultant and the group that's running the consultant, mainly because the space and the disposition of this building, whether you have it or not, how you use it, where it is, has a very profound effect on thinking about and designing what the common will look like. This could be, for example, the groups that you described are potential anchors for the revitalization of the common. It's not just how, but where and how much. So please, all I'm asking you is that you require the group to stay in contact basically with the master plan itself. That's all this is about. This is not a requirement for us to join in. So what I'm asking for is no siloing. I am very concerned that we're going to go back to the usual way of doing business where every, shall we say, interest or every group, every building has its own little group, and they don't speak to anyone else or consider any other concerns about finance or impact on the rest of the town. And they do needs analysis that basically are echo chambers. Okay. So I'm trying to unsilo. Our job, at the request of the town, is to do as much unsiloing and to avoid siloing as possible. So please, that's my only suggestion.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so this is, as much as this is for a working group, this is a draft. This is just, you know,
Look, the work needs to get
Throw some
done, somebody has
spaghetti
to
on the
do it, this is reasonable, I
yeah,
just
and
think,
I actually, your thoughts about having appointed or elected
yeah, if it comes down to,
members, I think is,
if it comes down to votes, I'd just assume it'd be members of town committees that do voting, but everybody, it's gonna be a collaborative effort, they're all gonna be sitting around the table, so, you know, as long as that distinction is made, and I think, I agree with Chase too, that there's, if you take a look at it, there's a couple of important entities that aren't here and need to be. School, what was it? Schools and,
so
PMBC
if we added PMBC in schools, there'd be 7 voting members.
There you go.
And then we'd have assistant TA, DPW director, treasurer, director of library, director of elder and human services.
you might find the schools end up sending one of their, you know, staff anyways, instead of a member, who knows, I mean, they, you know.
Well, so
Right, so would that be?
I wouldn't be tied to this list
committee
of
member,
staff so much. People, I just almost think you staff as needed, you know, but that, I don't know, your baby.
But as far as, no, it's all of our babies. But I think it's school committee. It's PMBC, because they're appointed or elected.
Right, yeah. But that could generate, you know, somebody from, I don't know whether somebody from schools needs to be in there. Well, they could bring them in as needed, you know, if they need a staff person there.
Very much like we did when doing building projects, whether it was at the police station, at the fire station, at Russell Street renovation, middle school. I mean, there were folks that, when they were needed, they were pulled in to help.
Okay.
The one other thing that I would like to see here is, you know, we've got a scope. I think we need to talk about a schedule. I would like, before we impanel this committee, to actually set out a schedule ahead of time, principally because the library funding is, it's ticking. So I would rather see, you know, sort of a 80-20 issue, you know, like 80% of the way there we can get to pretty quickly. The last 20% could take a really long time. I think if we as a board put a timeline on what we expect, that will help that committee get off the ground, get moving, and get us that 80% solution faster, rather than waiting to, you know, maybe go to 100% and wait 9 months or a year to do that. I don't know what the right time frame is, but I would like to put some kind of temporal constraint on it.
We could call for something as simple as a, you know, interim report in 3 months or something like that. And I don't know, because I don't know how much more meat we can put on that kind of stipulation right now.
I mean, And by putting a timeline on it, to some extent, we are putting the cart before the horse. I would be interested to.
Tell them that first order of business could be creating a calendar of, implementation calendar.
That could be it. And, I mean, it's going to take time to panel this anyway. FinCom, COA, everybody's got to choose their member.
Right. Well, we can make that time certain, too. Set it by, pick a date, right? End of the month. Sure. Everybody meets between now and then, so.
Okay.
And I do, by the way, echo my chairman's comments as far as an interface with the master plan and the consultants the town's paying for is just a no-brainer, so we shouldn't lose track of that, and we should make that make sure that happens.
Okay, so if we were to redefine the draft that we have in front of us, are we comfortable with having one member of the Board of Selectmen, or do you think it's necessary to have two members?
I have no problem with one. It's all advisory anyways. It all comes back here. Right.
If we go with one, so we have one member of the Board of Selectmen, one FinCom, Council on Aging, Board of Library Trustees, and PRCE, School Committee, and PMBC. That's 7. 7 voting members, and then ATA, DPW, Treasurer, Library Director, Director of Elder and Human Services, and Director of Park and Recreation, and I guess we would put the Superintendent on there as well. Or appointee.
The committee would be supported by?
All right.
Yeah.
Or, that's fine. That's
ex officio.
Of course, when you put other people's employees in the air, that's subject to their approval, right?
Right, subject to their approval.
Right. Any discussion around having 2 members of the Board of Selectmen? I kind
of like the idea of having 2 members, particularly because, like Paul said, it could otherwise end up being a bit of an echo chamber. And I think we and FinCom in particular can help break down that echo chamber a little bit.
I agree.
Okay.
Taking a broader
I can live with that.
perspective
I
on
wasn't
it.
getting hard on that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, then we'd have 8 voting members. That's,
Somebody gets the axe.
which, I mean, you can do that.
I look back at the Town Government Study Committee, we made it 8 and it functioned perfectly.
Yeah, okay. Don't get hung up on the odd even thing. Don't get hung up on the odd even thing.
I think it's beneficial to have 2, just scheduling wise.
That was my inclination, just that
Right. Just the
body became
volume.
so large
Yeah,
that it was like, oh,
exactly.
the cuts.
Well, what are you talking about? You cut it in half. Doing the Lord's work here.
Right. All right, so are we comfortable with that then? 2 members of the Board of Selectmen?
Sure.
Keith, do you have that drafted?
Got it, yep.
Prefer to have it alphabetical, but. Okay. Everybody comfortable with that? Do we want to put any timelines on it, as you mentioned?
What do we think is reasonable? I mean, let's say it'll be likely be impaneled by the end of the month.
I don't know if we have to put it in here or when we bring people in to appoint them, that initial meeting, tell them right then, here's what we're hoping for, is a 3-month report or.
I think.
Do we need to bring them in?
No, the way that's just on, you need to appoint your 2 tonight, but the way the rest of it is, I would say that would allow each of those
To appoint
committees
their own
to
member.
appoint their own,
Right.
unless you wanted to
Right.
bring them
I
in.
don't think we have to be the appointee.
Typically, they just send
I think
someone.
we're the appointing authority
Yeah.
and allowing them to select the one, I mean.
That's fine.
if-
I'm just saying, but
if
isn't
Carl
there going to be
Bryant
an
has-
initial meeting where we all get to go over the charge and the expectations?
I think that's right, and I think it probably, we can address the same issue as that master plan implementation committee's concern with the consultant. it is now our charge, whoever we place on this committee, to make sure that those two things happen.
Right.
You know, we don't necessarily need to bury it all.
That's true. Yeah, if we're gonna have two members on that board, then two members of that board are gonna carry that message to that board.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
You gotta set a schedule, you gotta stick to that schedule, and you gotta make sure to
Interface with the master
interface
plan.
with the master plan.
Cool.
Okay. Well, as part of this motion, do we want to include which two members?
And draw straws.
Well, we're gonna be
The short
challenged to find an evening on which to meet. So many different committees and
Well,
commitments.
doesn't this already fall under the charge of two of you? I know I'm not. I know it's not me.
Right, I mean, you guys would be the natural first choices if you want it.
Right.
You okay with it?
You're just continuing on what you're doing, right?
I mean, if there's somebody else who wants to do it, obviously, time-wise and
Well, one of
business-wise.
my goals is space needs for the seniors.
You want to jump on Joe's seat? You and I will do it?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to be involved with that.
Good.
Okay. You good with that?
Okay, I was about to say I wouldn't mind being involved as well, so I'm okay with you guys.
Okay.
The reason I principally wanted to be involved is because it actually fits in the sewer story pretty significantly as well.
Well, then maybe you should be in there.
Given the quantity of flow out of there, but
Right.
as long as you
We
guys.
we already have sewer here, but.
Yeah, right.
Town building and space
Cheers.
needs
No,
analysis.
it's yours if you want it.
I kind of do want it, but I don't want to shut you out if you feel as though that would be a significant impact.
I think it would, but,
Right. I mean, you and Joe worked on the space needs
So we should have
analysis
some
report.
continuity.
Right. That's just my thought process, nothing against Chase wanting to jump in. I just would like to be involved.
sort of like the
because
police
the
chief
seniors-
screening committee, you know, you and I set it up and then
Right, yeah.
stepped away from it, so.
Right.
I think it can be done, but like Cindy said, you guys put the needs assessment together,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
I'm
okay
leaving
if
it to you. I'm
you
really
okay if I
leaving it
go
to
with
you.
it?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna, if Maureen's not watching. All right, so Cindy and Chuck, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
You okay with that? All right, I'll definitely keep you very much in the loop as far as the sewer's concerned. Good. All right. Got that, Keith?
Got it.
I just read along one, someone else want to read
So
along one?
you want to, just as written?
I'll move that, can I get away with that?
No, can you get away with that?
You
Not
could.
any bad habits.
All right, go ahead, read it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to establish a town building and space needs analysis working group to be comprised of 2 selectmen and 1 member each of the following boards: Finance Committee, Permanent Municipal Building Committee, Council on Aging, Board of Library Trustees, Parks and Recreation Commission, and School Committee. The committee will be supported by the Assistant Town Administrator, DPW Director, Treasurer, Director of Elder and Human Services, and the Library Director, Director of Parks, Rec, and Community Education, and the school intendants, subject to approval of their respective boards. The committee's charge will be to work collaboratively to establish a plan, to recommend a long-term and short-term plan, to address the town office space needs study, and the 2 Board of Selectmen appointees are Chuck and Cindy, right?
Second.
Works. Second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, great, thanks, guys. All right, thanks, Chris. So we have,
Public hearing.
continuation of public hearing. Speed limits.
Continuing this, the group gets smaller and smaller. Go another week, there'll be nobody here.
All right, so, continuation public hearing for reduction of speeds on town roads to 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 17C and 18B. We have a revised list from Police and Highway. And thank you, Chief.
And a revised signage map too, right?
Correct, yes. Nice map up there.
Couple quick things, obviously, you also got a letter this week from the bicycle and pedestrian group asking for 25 MPH in the entire community. So far, about 46 communities have notified Mass DOT that that's what they have voted to do, is go 25 miles per hour posted in the community unless otherwise posted. That would require about 24 postings in our community if the board was to go to that. That's all the entryways into the community that would need to be posted 25 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. So what that would do, it allows all the thickly settled areas to automatically go to 25 unless you, as the board, like, let's say for instance, Newtown Road is 35, you wish to leave that at 35, obviously it can stay there. If Goldsmith right now is an unposted thickly settled, so that would be very nice because it would go to 25, and actually we could put some postings on these longer roads that need postings. So I'm not sure what the board's will is on this. Obviously, the last meeting, there was a lot of people that wanted their roads posted at 25 more than even I had known about Lawrence Street and others. Mass DOT's encouragement is to, if the board is going to adopt 25 mile per hour streets, that it does do the entire community. That's right on their website. They're asking now you don't have to. They're encouraging you to do it that way to stop some driver confusion within the community, is what their point is. Doesn't require now that we go up and post every road up in the Long Lake area, things like that, because as you enter town, that's what the sign says. I've seen it in several communities around us. Actually, I've seen a lot in Hollis, New Hampshire. All their entryway roads are posted 30 mph unless otherwise posted. Fort Devens is actually posted that way. Lexington is now posted that way. Beverly, Fairhaven, Nantucket, a lot of the cities have obviously done it. But I guess I understand Mass DOT's reasoning about 25 miles per hour. If it's townwide, it's understood unless you see a posting that says otherwise, that's as fast as you go. Except obviously on state roads. Now you can appeal to the state to change some areas of state roads to 25 miles per hour under this, but it requires an appeal system, so I don't want to get too heavily into that right now and confuse the situation. So,
but all of those state roads are currently posted.
That is correct.
Anyway,
that's
right,
correct. That is correct. So I don't know what the board's flavor is on this. I was asked to look at it. There are some very good pluses for the lake area, for the Russell Street area, for things of that nature, unless the board sees fit. I think Russell Street, even 25 does not bother me on Russell Street. I had asked for 20, but 25 certainly does not bother me down on that roadway. When the children are present, the lights are flashing, is 20 mph by state law anyways. Goldsmith Street, some people requested signage up there. Well, the problem is when the state did the study there, they brought the speed limit up from 30 miles an hour, and that typically is what happens on a lot of these roadways. It's really, up to what the board wants to see. It doesn't require certainly the highway department to do as many postings and or repostings, unless there's some streets that once you make that change that we want to fall under the 25 if they're posted at 30.
Can you offhand think of any roads that would be creating traffic problems?
Yeah, good.
Feeder roads are things that are safely working at a higher speed that are all of a sudden going to bog down.
Well, we wouldn't have to change those unless you wanted to.
Well, okay.
So let's say Taylor Street, for instance, or Neshoba Road is a feeder road. Right. We wouldn't have to change Neshoba Road because it's already posted at the 35 that it is. If it's working and it's working okay there, you just leave the speed, that posting alone. That's why it's the other way, unless otherwise posted.
I get you.
Right.
All right.
So you can post higher than 25 and leave it alone. Yeah. Like Newtown Road, for instance, that's a feeder road.
Yeah.
It works well at what it is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend touching it. You know, Goldsmith Street, I would recommend, you know, obviously doing that.
I'm confused, Chief. If you went to town and it says that the town is a 25-mile-an-hour zone, but then Newtown Road could be different?
Unless posted otherwise.
Right.
So the sign would say.
Right, the sign says,
Unless posted otherwise.
matter of fact, I can pass around with the, you still have it. I know Mass DOT actually has it on their website. Sorry, I can just pass my phone around. That's what they recommend.
Well, I'm warming up to that, this whole idea, but I wonder if procedurally, we probably would have to have another hearing with that as a new proposal.
I actually really like this idea, because the confusion is what I think could be our biggest challenge.
And to be quite honest with you, this, you know, and I apologize, I looked up on the state website today, this afternoon, before I came in here and saw that recommendation. I also, for whatever reason, I missed the letter from the pedestrian advisory group until this afternoon. And then I had a few other people stop in my office today. So that's why I kind of have switched from my long list to a short list, talking to Chris real quick from the highway department. There's about 24 to, you know, I counted the feeder roads, about 26 roads in, about $300 a piece. It keeps it around $10,000, which is doable, much better than my original $35,000 list of roadway postings.
I guess one of my questions is it, who goes 25? You mentioned Devon's. I've worked on Devon's. If I go 25 miles down the road, I have someone on my rear end the whole time, and sometimes beeping. When you're in town, try to go 25 miles an hour and see how many people do it.
So the state roads will still be the state road speed limits?
And if they posted otherwise, they would stay the same too.
Correct.
Right.
I'm just saying,
I'm
on any town road that's a straightaway, go 25 miles an hour. I guess I'm not condoning going fast, and I don't go fast.
I know, I'm with you.
But again, if we want those to stay where they're at, you leave the postings that are up there on those roads. If you believe Howell Ave is working okay at 30, you just leave the sign that, you know, unless otherwise posted, you leave that posting at 30. Taylor Street works at 30 or 35. Now, part of that's a state road, so we'd have a, quandary there, but being a cut across road, Bruce Street's another example now that's been repaved. It certainly is a connector road.
It sure is.
What's the posted speed limit there now?
It's 30.
It's 30.
So that would stay, right?
Well, unless we decided that we should slow that down. I think Bruce Street works fairly well until it gets into the curves. It can get kind of interesting with, because again, the creep is, okay, if it's posted at 25 and they're doing 30, if it's posted at 30 and they're doing 35, there's always the creep, as I call it, over the postings.
My concern based on that is more the lake area. I mean, we were gonna bring those all down to 20. As you entered into that neighborhood, it was gonna be all 20.
Right, but actually rereading the state statute, I don't know that those actually would apply, because it's, the 20 is reserved for safety zones. And they really have some specific.
Recreational
area. Recreational area, but, is every road in the lake, in the recreational area,
I've recreated on that.
Well, I'm just looking at Adams Street, 20 miles an hour. I don't think that it should be any higher than that.
No, but again,
Well, we could post it.
We can post lower.
It's posted,
As a matter of fact, I think it's posted 20 now.
Is it?
Should be. I'll double check that.
She went too fast, she couldn't see the sign. But that's actually one of the nice things about this, is that you no longer need to know, I'm in the lake area, it's 20, you need to know, I'm going 25, that's it. And I pull out on Goldsmith and I'm still going 25, and that, the consistency is.
And you see your posting sign, it's 30 or 35, and you know that you can go,
It's only affirmatively do you go more than, but affirmatively do you know that the speed limit is more than 25. So this also gets at my biggest concern, which was Goldsmith, actually, rather than the lake area.
Right.
So certainly there are roads that would
would keep their current postings and be left alone. This would get, you know, the Lake area roads, the White Pine Drive area, the Lake Warren area, the Mattawanakee areas, you know, places like that, you know, now you'd have to have, you know, Lake Mattawanakee, you'd have to have like 35 postings alone just to do that on all the two-way streets down there. So it does get some consistency throughout the community, with the unless otherwise posted. And if a road's posted at 35 and we believe that's where it should belong, then we just leave it where it belongs.
But like Mattawanakee, there's one way in.
That's right.
We could put a sign up there.
Well, you could put an extra sign there if you wanted to.
If we wanted to get down to 20, we could very easily do.
Correct.
And
It's
if
an easy
you put a
post.
few extra signs around town, and we're still way the hell under what it was gonna cost us to.
My recommendation would be to put some signs, you know, strategically in other spots, just for reminders, but these are just your feeder roads. You've got like 24 to get hit your every entrance into the community.
Hit the statutory requirement.
Right. And then certainly in other areas, I think you might want to have one early on Goldsmith Street coming up out of the common. You know, if that's, you know, if you want to, if the board's,
I think that would be
keep that
really
25,
important,
just to
because
remember.
That then is our signage for the lake area as a whole.
Right, so.
I'd almost, I'm okay with 25. And Joe, I totally get your point. But I think that there are other, if we run into those roads that we feel that we need to make the exception, we can make that down the road. And then we're adding signs.
Or just leave in place what's already posted until we decide to change.
Sure.
What we're
Yeah.
doing.
Correct, that's what I would.
There are a couple of streets that feed the lake, the beach, that I would recommend strongly.
Fully understand, I think anything going by Association Beach, anything on Town Road, you know, anything that especially surrounds those areas that are feeding the pedestrian traffic, especially for the beach areas and things like that, certainly, you know, that certainly would qualify because it's, you know, a place where people recreate, and you know, with this high pedestrian traffic.
Town road, lake
Bicycles,
road.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Somebody over there.
Yes.
Mary Pickard, 160 Great Road. My concern is, well, I'm on 2A. They come bombing from the center of town, and my car goes like this when I'm getting into my driveway. We've got to do something with that. And also, it's a mess anyway, but it's like nobody's paying any attention.
The challenge that we have with 2A.
I've lived there all my life.
No, but it's a state road.
We have no concern?
We can appeal.
We have lots of concern.
Yeah, absolutely, there's plenty of concern.
It's not our call.
So
And
you have-
I'm really concerned about the new stuff that they're building there, because it's going to, makes me nervous.
Well, because people are gonna be slowing down there at the crest of the hill too, right? Taking lefts or rights into the new development.
But also the number of people, that
Yeah.
also makes me a little nervous too.
Yeah, there's, again, we can appeal the state.
Yeah.
We're doing that at the high school right now, trying to get some mitigation down there. We did it at Willow and Bruce, and so we do look at those high concern areas.
If we're going in the direction I think we're going in, and I'll ask a procedural question of Keith then, is it appropriate that we close this hearing, have the chief put another proposal together, invite in the pedestrian folks who are making the pitch, and then have another hearing, so everybody knows we're dealing with a new concept, rather than just change it on the fly?
Yeah, you'd need a new hearing, because the original hearing notice back for the first week in December was for a finite list.
Mhm.
And it would be, in the subsequent hearings, you take that list and make it smaller, but it's still that list. If you want to expand it, I think we really need to do
So it's
that
on the
with
floor
a
notice.
public hearing notice. And we'd want to put it in the newspaper again, so I'd say like a month from tonight. Or maybe even later.
After the 23rd.
After the warrant closes.
Yeah, I think there's.
We'll be busy on the next two meetings. So maybe-
And Chief, you could revamp your proposal, right, and we could also, appropriately ought to get the pedestrian folks involved, because that's what prompted our reconsideration.
So, may I speak?
Yes, please do.
Anne Grace, 82 Nashoba Road. I'm also on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we strongly support this motion, and we would like to see, when we surveyed the town, we found this tremendous interest in safer places to walk and reducing speeds and having clarity around what's acceptable and what isn't. And I think we can also use this as a way of changing the culture in the town so that you don't have someone on your tail chasing you. That's not what we want to see around here. Whatever your procedure has to be, we fully support it, and to simplify and clarify it, make the town safer, we very much appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think, Paul, your point is well taken. Does anybody have any?
I'll move to close the hearing.
Could you do it anytime after June 8th?
How many days have we taken?
Just a joke.
Just slow.
Did you make that motion, Paul?
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous, great, we're closed. I will ask that we do post a new hearing. Chief, if you could get us that information so that we'll look at doing something the week of June 15th. Or sooner. All right, good. Thank you very much. Chris, thanks for your input. All right, so is the only thing we have left minutes and
Minutes and
goal updates?
goals.
All right, do we, I do need to run.
You could do the minutes tonight.
Want to do the minutes, and then how are we on goal updates, folks? Do we want to?
You want a quickie summary?
Yeah, can we just do a quick version?
Bye. And, yeah, you want to do that?
Yes.
All right, can someone take the lead? I have to run to the restroom.
Want to go first?
Yeah, all right, I'll just as a random jump in on the topic that Cindy and I are working on together, the reorganization or organizational, structural type issues. We ended up taking a number of things that have popped up either in conversation in the retreat we had, ongoing issues, and boiled them down into like 6 subtopic areas. Mary, could I just, Mary, can't hear myself up here. 6 topic areas, which I'll speak to 3 of them, and Cindy can speak to the other 3 as far as what we identified as the issue, what we've done to date, what our working proposal might be, and then what next steps are. So they fall into the categories of appointed board and committee management, Board of Selectmen procedural timelines / calendar, lit stat, which is, well, that's the data-driven policy development, which we've spoken to in the past. I'll talk to that in a minute. Department head performance reviews, organizational structure, and hiring process. And what do you say, Cindy? I'll talk to the lit stat department head and the org structure, and you take the other 3. Is that what we?
Right, yeah,
okay.
that's what we do.
All right. So lit stat is just a on-the-fly name for we're copying by at least a name what the city of Amesbury got an award for a Pickard Award. Had nothing to do with you unless you're a relative and you don't know it, but for excellence in government, and basically it's the kind of the growing process of using data to drive policy development and to do oversight. So a lot of our departments already do it well, so what we're suggesting here is that we won't be any need to recreate the wheel. Cindy and I met with Thatcher Keyser, who's up at Devon's now. A couple of you folks know him. Keith certainly knows him, and I believe, Joe, you work with him. He was mayor of Amesbury when they instituted it. He has a PowerPoint that either he or one of the folks that he's worked with would be happy to come down and present to us at some point, just to kind of explain what value there is in it. This isn't like a major investment of, shouldn't have to be a major investment of anything other than using existing data and organizing it so that you are deriving your policy proposals on the basis of what do the stats show you, and then holding departments essentially accountable to that too. And they use it in various communities now as just an ongoing management tool. And so that's that. So I think the next steps there would be getting somebody in here to make that presentation so that the board as a whole can see it. And then I think Cindy and I probably ought to sit down with Keith too and talk about how best to go ahead and pursue that. The department head performance reviews, I think we all identified that while we have a nice form and they do occur, there's some basic problems in when it's timed out during the year, and then what we do with that information. Again, you talk about the word came up, silos. I mean, these all the reviews are done currently independently of each other, and then they're never brought back to the board for a discussion. Town of Acton, you go to their website, and on the department heads, the reviews posted right on the website. So that's that's something to be considered. I think what Cindy and I have talked about doing is starting with kind of a review of the where it takes place in the calendar, how the board would implement it, and then, reviewing the form that we're currently using, just, to kind of make it more of a meaningful tool rather than something that's just currently done right around election season, town meeting, and then the people who do it, and then it's never heard of again. So we'll have some recommendations on that soon and welcome your input. Third topic that I'll discuss, organizational structure. This is just kind of a reaction that in the past couple of years, within the past 2 years, we've made 2 significant changes to the management level staff that we work with, infecting the finance department, adding the assistant town administrator, and then creating the DP, that's actually 3 changes, DPW position. And there were changes in bylaw at the time when that was initiated, and I think now with a couple of years' experience, we're taking some of the feedback and our own reactions on how best to maintain relations with the board so that those issues are priority to us. I think what we've heard consistently and experienced consistently are issues relative to finance, budget, and transportation. We'd probably be suggesting something that along the lines of a similar relationship we have with the police and fire departments, where we have a direct line on policy issues on a management level. So we'll probably be encouraging a dialogue with that, meeting with each of the board members and the potential departments that would be affected by it, and come back with a proposal on that as well. None of which I would expect would happen before town meeting, since we're busy with other things.
Right.
Cindy?
Okay, I'm a little unprepared for this, but I don't know why. So appointed board and committee management was...
If you look up, just go over like the opioid thing. Certainly, we've got a lot of updates on that. Just go over kind of person time as well. So if you've got something,
no, that's fine.
You've
So
got more information.
right. No, so the appointed board and committee management. You've heard me raise not concerns, but the feeling that we need to be more structured with the boards that we appoint. We better follow up with them. So we discussed having a
compliance issues, and as far as minutes and postings and those sort of things.
Yeah, just so that we can. I mean, we take the time to appoint these boards and committees, but there's no follow-up after that initial introduction with them. So I think, and a lot of them don't post minutes. So it would just be better if we have a follow-up process with them, just so that we maintain a level of communication with them. The procedural timeline, we talked about this at our retreat with our consultant. So Paul and I did review our initial timeline. We did move some things around that don't seem to coincide, especially with election time in May, with respect to employee reviews, and also just setting up, having the chair at that time, at the end of the year, establish an agenda for the upcoming retreat, providing updates on goals prior to the election, those sort of things.
Yeah, and policies that need to be annually renewed and kind of...
Annual review of policies, just making sure that the new members are on board.
New member training, right, those kind of things. Can incorporate a lot of that into an official schedule, and actually Cindy did a draft of a schedule, which,
Versus send them upstairs and say, hey, just go in front of Diana and
raise your hand.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. You got it, right? See you in a couple of years when we need to reappoint you.
And what was the other one? It was the hiring process?
Yes.
Yeah, so the hiring process. So, I mean, and part of this is maybe just information that I don't know, But I did find a policy that we put in place, the board put in place in 2015 with respect to the process for hiring new employees and, keeping the board, basically coming before the board and saying, hey, this department needs a new employee or feels they need a new employee, and they have to submit some documentation for that request. And then there's a whole process that's supposed to be followed, and I'm not certain that it's being followed. And so that was something that Paul and I just talked about. There was,
We've got some new arrangements too with boards that through agreements with this board now have moved their hiring process essentially under the administrator, and that's all happened since that 2015 bylaw was adopted too.
Right, we're going to revisit the 2015 policy that was implemented and just compare it to what's happening now, and see what adjustments need to be made. And then with respect to the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction, like I said earlier, that's going really well. I've been contacted by doctors and attorneys and just various people, not only from Littleton, but from Groton and other communities that have heard about it.
This article in the Independent.
Yeah, that was awesome with Donna. That was great. And the other thing I found when we were at the MMA was the forum I attended that I think I mentioned before. We've really done everything right, and we're so much farther ahead than other communities, bigger communities that have a much bigger problem than what we have now. So I was really proud of that, and it's just all come together. One thing that I learned is neighboring communities 20 minutes up the road are inundated right now with this crisis. And so really, it's right up the road. So we really have to just be diligent and make sure it doesn't find its way to Littleton. So, but like I said, there's a great team of people in place, and I'll definitely keep you up to date on the course of action for that goal.
Good deal.
Yep.
And that's the 22nd?
That's the 22nd, yeah. I scheduled it before the planning board.
Well, it sounds like you might be able to make it to the 5:30 to 7?
Yeah.
Planning board 6:30, we can delay them. Pull the fire alarm or something.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, probably, yeah, because we're getting kicked out of the other meeting room at 7, yeah, so.
Find a way.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Cindy. Chase, any updates you want to share right now? Or?
Well, I mean, I think the big ones are, well, the single biggest one is the sewer. Last week before last, we met with the property manager for IBM. She's going to take it back to her people. Keith, did you ever get follow-up from her on?
I contacted her last week, and she was
still.
She had met with her client, the property owner, but they're doing their own internal review. So that she'll get back to us.
The single most important thing is that we didn't sit down with IBM and they go, oh, actually, we just installed a brand-new $5 million wastewater treatment plant. Right, exactly. I mean, to the extent that there could have been a single crushing defeat, that would have been the single crushing defeat.
And that follows a week or two after the very positive meeting with Sam Park, too.
Exactly. And now the information that we got from Sam was, guys, I don't think I would be able to come online day one, but I would love to not be in the sewer business. Let's talk about how I can not be in the sewer business either, when the system comes online because we integrate his system, or, some number of years down the line when rather than do major capital upgrades to his system, he signs onto ours. So the short story is that our biggest wastewater contributors are interested in what we're doing in a concrete way. But like everyone else, they want to know dollars. Nobody's going to do it if it's financially a poor choice. Right. So that's where the direction we're actively working in now is solving the dollar.
We did just get another piece of news too. I guess Chris has already left on the testing at the discharge site, and that was all very positive.
Oh
too.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah.
Well, and that's it. So one of the really important pieces of this is that regardless of where the treatment facility is, and frankly, regardless of what form the treatment facility takes, there still needs to be a discharge location. So to the extent that technologically we've gotten out in front on one rather than the other, the discharge location is the ideal location to do that. And then, you know, obviously we have potentially an article coming up on the town meeting warrant for design funds, and I think a lot of that is contingent on being able to put the dollars behind that.
And our consultants fully understand that that's our number one expectation, that they deliver that ASAP.
And that's essentially what we told them, is that if you need to prioritize one or the other, I don't care if you've picked the perfect pump. It doesn't matter. You know, what I need to know is how much is this going to cost people, because bringing it to town meeting without a dollar value would be well, Paul can present it if that's the case.
Well, I think we're pretty, there seems to be kind of a consensus on the overall cost of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. The capital cost.
It's when you bring it down to what is it going to cost somebody to hook up, that which is math they can do, at least, you know, and we're pressuring them to do it, because people want to know, even if it's not a contract, even if it's just a you know, working number.
And our expectation is that we will not be holding public meetings prior to putting the article on the town meeting warrant, but between the finalizing the warrant and town meeting, we expect to do public meetings that address those questions specifically. A, because we owe it to residents, but B, because it fits nicely with the article. So, the other thing Paul and I have been working on is the AgCom stuff. We got out of the gate a little bit slow this year to get Church Meadows and the orchard squared away as far as leases are concerned, but the Ag Working Group, though somewhat slowly, partly due to my own inability to meet and I think get everything going there. We're moving slowly and getting those leases put together and the plan set for that.
Yeah, this year's stuff is in the pipeline, and Anthony has been a help on that.
Yeah, Anthony, you know, coming from Brookline, his agricultural experience is really, you know, really driving the bus on this one.
There is one. There is one farm. All right, is it right? I've been to it. There was it right on those.
Tom Brady's house.
The street system in Boston is cow paths.
Right, sure. But no, there's still a working farm in Brookline, right?
You know where it is, right by the Dexter School.
Yeah.
Come on, right up the street from Faulkner Hospital.
Brookline is,
I haven't been by there.
it's fading into the distance.
A couple other minor things.
Baldwin, on the other hand, no, not so much.
More infrastructure related, that obviously the MS4, the delay of the implementation of the MS4 was significant. You know, we're still making progress in getting that done. It becomes further complicated, though, by the fact that the governor just filed a bill to take over stormwater permitting from EPA. And so the state is seeking the delegation of that authority. I don't know exactly how that's going to impact the MS4, because that is an EPA permit. I would think for the short term it still goes through the EPA, but that'll continue to get implemented one way or the other, because the EPA will force the states to implement it, even if the permit is through the state rather than EPA. A number of other small things, but I think that really covers the major stuff.
Big rocks.
Yep.
Nice. Joe?
Just quickly, the housing initiative, we're on track with that. The other thing about the space study, which you two are going to go after the next part of it, we have a timetable there too, and hopefully there's long-term plans for the whole future, but I think it's obvious that there are certain departments in our town that need immediate results, not something 2 years down the road or something like that. And there are ways that you'll probably figure out that and I'll put my 2 cents in when needed, that we can probably solve some of those problems to alleviate some of the space problems. And even though it could be something that's temporary, but well done. So, that's it.
Great. I think we touched on a lot of, we share a lot of the same goals, all of us, but police chief, that process is well underway. Jay's alluded to
Did I see
earlier.
41?
Yes, there was 41 applicants, so right now I'm just redacting the last few. They have a subcommittee consisting of Tom Rocker, Kelly Clenchy, and Gary. that will be looking at the resumes and then determining which ones to interview. They'll do some interviews which will be in closed session still. Hopefully the beginning of January, of March. And then the assessment center we're looking at, we have a date being held for the 24th, which would be Saturday. We'd utilize this building. We'll probably take the whole building, keep it for ourselves that day and not let anybody use the building. So we can have different sections going on.
For the assessment center?
For the assessment center, yeah. It has to be a few different rooms, so they would do their presentation and so forth. Here, they would do some work with laptops in a conference room that are no internet connection, so forth. Fred Ryan's putting together a manual, which we won't get until the day of the assessment center, to keep the scenarios strictly confidential. The committee does want to chime in on some of the stuff, which Fred will talk to them, scheduled to talk to them on February 28th.
If there's something in particular they're looking for, they wanted to drive some of the assessment towards that.
Yeah, they have some ideas, and they may already, Fred may already have them incorporated, but he can pass on some of his past assessment center's ideas and then take the committee's recommendations into play. So it's getting there. It's getting there. So hopefully by,
later.
Yeah, beginning of April, we'll have maybe made an offer to somebody.
Well, there you go. That's great. So Chase and I were involved with you in kind of putting together the process, and then Cindy and Joe have stepped up and are in very much in the selection process, and so I appreciate it.
Paul, lots of moral support.
Paul's been, cheerleading. Appreciate that. All right. That was one of the big ones that I wanted to make sure we did talk about. Paul and I have had some conversations with Greg and Gary from FinCom relative to financial policies. It's something that we need to revisit here, heading into town meeting. Joe mentioned space needs. Keith, you've done a lot of work with green communities and transportation relative to a lot of the MassWorks stuff and Crosstown Connect. Obviously, the MBTA, we keep that beat.
Yeah, the parking, yeah, there's an awful lot.
So those are all things that we very much keep in front of us, and we continue to work on. So the alumni and athletic field needs study, we had the Gale presentation. I think we probably would be good for you and I to sit down with a couple of the Park and Rec commissioners to go to that next step with the athletic fields needs study, especially where they have something on potentially in front of the CPC for funding, and we can take a look at that with them. As far as the MOU is concerned, it's not we have to have something in the hands of the superintendent in order for bond council to bond alumni field on the MOU relative to alumni field, but there's also an MOU, there's a lot of other items that need to be addressed with Park and Rec and the sharing of fields and school property and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of morphed into a couple of different MOUs, I think. That we need to pull you into more so, and it's kind of been myself, Gary Austin, and Mike Fontanella, and I need to get you up to speed on that. The retreat, we did a retreat. I think it was successful. I think we all learned something from it. I think
Still pulling ideas out of it now.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it was beneficial, and spending the time together at it was kind of a mini retreat, getting together at the MMA. I think that was good, beneficial for all of us, and for the strength of this board.
It's at Male yesterday.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
I saw that.
Chase, you and I could probably reach out to Sam and just try to...
Yeah, we should touch base again. I mean,
Yeah.
we touched base with Sam a couple times on the space needs study.
Yeah, exactly.
Implications thereof.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, I think we should probably do a better job of understanding the timeline of the MBLC, and furthermore, what constraints are fixed with the MBLC grant and what constraints are flexible.
Right.
Because I don't think they're all fixed, even, down to, well, I've been given some indication that even the location of the building could, in some scenarios, change.
Sir. All right. Joe, you mentioned that you and I be on the town officer space needs study, and we had that report. We took another step today towards that, and you mentioned that some departments are in more urgent need than some others. And I know that Mary's still here, so show some love to her, and hopefully show some love to you, because you're still here with us, so.
Well, I'm learning.
Learning not to stay as late? Oh, Mike's here as well.
No, I said when I'd retire, I said, I wanted to get into politics.
Should run for select.
I was wrong.
You have too many friends?
It's interesting.
It is. But, so that's kind of like the Reader's Digest fast
Yeah, I
pace.
learned stuff. It was worth going through, even though we're, kind of numb at this hour.
Yeah, exactly. So, good work tonight. I think we did a nice job hearing the neighbors.
Yeah.
With the Class 2 license, I think we ended up getting to a place that is acceptable to everybody, and
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that I think that we're doing well as a board. And there's a lot of things we're doing well as a board, but I like the fact that we're allowing people to be heard.
Yeah.
So.
Good night.
Good night, Ray. Thank you. Get your water bottle? You got your water bottle?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right in there.
There you go. All right, we do have a couple of sets of minutes one from December 4th, I believe, and then.
Paolo Levy.
Paolo
my
Levy.
Portuguese cousin was here.
Must have been spell check in Portuguese.
Other than
I didn't have any.
a couple of six, some spelling.
They were
type things,
fine.
I think
Yeah,
everything looked
it was-
okay. So I will accept the motion on the first one.
I was at that meeting, so I'll move the December 4th meeting minutes as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it's.
You weren't there, you'll have to abstain, take our word
You
for
don't
it.
have to abstain, but I will. The other meeting minutes are for January.
No, I think it was at December 18th, wasn't it?
December 18th, okay.
And
I did read them, but I didn't look at them.
that was the one I was not.
You were
at.
absent,
Right.
so. Motion to approve?
Yeah, and what was the date? The
December
18th. Move to approve the minutes, January 18, 2018.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? With the
Abstain.
abstention of Mr. Glavy. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good evening, everybody. We'll be back here in 2 weeks, which is the 26th. Have a great week. Thank you.